Chapter 1, The Boy Who Wants Some Help. What do you mean by that? Itachi looked at the boy in front of him with a displeased face. The boy smiled, scratched the back of his neck, and simply closed his eyes, as if waiting for his answer. Itachi, on his part, gave a half smile, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, and finally said, "I'm not going to go with you on a date, Issei, but if you want some advice, just be yourself. It always worked for me." Itachi's smile reflected confidence, a kind of confidence Issei had never seen before. Their eyes met for a moment before Issei's face turned pale. But Issei tried to object, but Itachi shook his head. "You know what they say, just do it." Itachi smiled again, then turned around and walked toward the main exit of the Kuoh Academy. Issei stayed there alone, watching his friend walk away with a reluctant look, feeling, to say the least, disappointed. On the other hand, after leaving the Kuoh Academy, Itachi turned back to observe the institution, his eyes slightly shining. His frown soon turned into a faint, bright smile. His beautiful face showed confidence, and his body felt a little too good. "It's a nice place," Itachi smiled. It had been a while since he had felt this, a relative, calming peace. He never thought that after dying, he could be reborn again. At first, he was confused, simply watching his mother in this world, watching the world, and observing people from the perspective of a newborn child, then growing into a boy almost incapable of possessing considerable strength. He had once thought it was some kind of illusion, but how could he fall for illusions? Gradually, he accepted this world as his own, and finally, at 6 years old, he resumed practicing ninja skills. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu. In fact, Itachi didn't know if it was luck or coincidence that he could use chakra, or that his Sharingan activated after training a little, but he was grateful for it. As for the Mangekyou Sharingan, although Itachi can activate it, he simply preferred not to. After all, the Mangekyou can leave him blind after continuous use. Itachi began walking back home, thinking that it was going to be a particular day, but his little companion invited him out with a girl. Why? Maybe to help him conquer that girl. He felt a bit strange, a small aversion crossing his heart as he observed the surrounding landscape. After all, he had once been Itachi Uchiha, the man who gave his life for his younger brother, and protected the village of Konoha until his last day. Although now in a new world, with a new story to write, he still felt nostalgic, and some of his old attitudes had not vanished. Itachi blinked, returned home quickly, and soon began a new day. A couple of days later, the dazzling light of the sun of a new day began to appear, crossing the mountains and bathing the entire Kuoh city with its yellowish light and unique warmth. Across the buildings of the big city, a young Itachi was jumping, his steps from roof to roof, fast and precise, unnoticed by anyone. He moved with such speed and grace that even Sasuke would have been astonished. He went from jumping building to reaching a nearby forest to begin his training. First, practice with classic kunai, then taijutsu, ninjutsu, his particular jutsus like the great fireball, body replacement, and several more practiced in nature. After all that, Itachi bathed in a nearby lake and finally began walking back to the big city. Amid all this, Itachi observed nature, the treetops swaying with the wind that shook them, the slightly earthy smell, the birds' songs, and simply kept walking slowly. What could Sasuke be doing? Itachi wondered, then shook his head. In fact, he had done everything possible for his brother, so much that he even forgot to live for himself. It doesn't matter now, I guess. After all, I haven't found any way to return to the old world, Itachi said to himself, then let out a big sigh. Like a person releasing a heavy mental burden that had been weighing on his shoulders, he felt relieved. I'm going to have to let go. Sasuke has to learn to live on his own. Itachi smiled, raised his head to look at the sun, and finally blinked a couple of times. He patted his pockets and decided to go eat something delicious. Hours later, "Miss Yuma, you could." A familiar boy's voice caught Itachi's attention as he rested quietly on a bench in the city park. Huh? Itachi, who was in the middle of contemplating the birds, quickly steadied himself on the bench, looked around, and quickly found Issei with his gaze. Itachi's face turned a strange color, his eyes dilated, his mind began to work quickly, and somehow disbelief spread throughout his body. Is Issei really having a date with a pretty girl? Itachi squinted, a fake smile spreading across his face as he almost shouted, "Impossible!" However, after confirming his sight was clear, he began laughing out loud. Ha ha ha! His somewhat loud laughter quickly caught the attention of people nearby. Several could not help but look at the handsome boy with dark circles. Well, not exactly dark circles, but some kind of expression lines around his eyes, laughing. One of them, a handsome blonde-haired boy, also smiled upon seeing Itachi. "Itachi, looks like you finally left your house to live life for a moment." The blonde boy smiled before walking away. Issei, who was about to soil his pants out of fear, lifted his head, watching his childhood friend laughing nearby, and like a girl seeing her K-pop idol, smiled while blushing. The girl next to him, Yuma, also noticed the changes in Issei's face and followed his gaze. "Is that boy someone you know?" Yuma wondered, then observed Itachi's body before smiling. "Wow, I didn't think a K-pop idol would be strolling around here." Issei grabbed Yuma's hand and almost too hurriedly ran toward Itachi. The sudden movement surprised her, her body unbalanced for a moment, letting out a cute "Jaya," before moving her delicate legs to keep up with Issei. "Itachi, Itachi, Itachi." Issei said his childhood friend's name 3 times as he approached, catching his attention and making him stop laughing. "Good thing you're here. As you can see, I wasn't lying," Issei said, slightly turning his head to look at the slightly disheveled Yuma. "Huh?" Itachi looked at Yuma, who also returned the gaze. Both, as if seeing something strange in each other's eyes, stared for a moment. Itachi observed her. His smile almost instantly vanished. His black and clear eyes analyzed the girl for a moment, all while his nose twitched at a particular scent, the smell of human blood. He had spent so much time killing and living among corpses that he perceived it almost effortlessly. The smell of human blood is hard to hide, even after bathing or using lots of perfume. On the other hand, Yuma's gaze on Itachi was one of contemplation, admiration even. How can such a young boy have those expression lines around the eyes? But more importantly, why does this guy look sculpted to measure? Yuma wondered. Her eyes effortlessly caught Itachi's features. His smile, his hair, his face, his eyes, his nose, his legs, all so symmetrically perfect that it could only be possible if Itachi were a statue referencing male beauty. Ahem, Issei gave a big sigh and pretended to cough, smiled again and looked at Itachi. His eyes almost said, "Praise me, I have a girl," as he opened his mouth. "Itachi, she is the girl I told you about the other day. Her name is Yuma, last name Chan, or how was it? Ha ha ha." The poor boy made a joke that was really hard to understand, so Itachi just tilted his head in confusion. "The pleasure is yours, Miss Yuma, last name Chan." Itachi pushed his doubts to the back of his heart, made a casual smile, stood up, and extended a hand toward the girl. "My name is Itachi, but everyone calls me Itachi." He also made a joke that was hard to understand. Chapter 2, Change of Plans. "What the hell?" Yuma froze in place for a moment, staring wide-eyed at the 2 boys in front of her. One with a plain face and a slightly unpleasant attitude, and the other who looked as if he'd been carved by angels themselves. A flicker of discomfort crossed her face as her eyes locked onto Itachi. "Is this guy an idiot?" she thought, but quickly shook her head and extended her right hand. "Thanks, Itachi, my name's Yuma, last name Chan," she said with a smile after that little joke, to which Itachi simply nodded a few times. Indeed, indeed," Itachi nodded again, but unconsciously decided to follow Issei during today's date. After all, this girl seemed dangerous. "Why don't we go to that place where they sell fried chicken and other things that we saw the other day?" Issei chimed in, placing his hands on both Yuma's and Itachi's and smiling faintly. His intentions were obvious. "You mean KFC?" Yuma asked. Issei nodded eagerly with a grin, which made both Yuma and Itachi raise their eyebrows in disbelief. "I know this girl is probably an assassin, but taking her to KFC on the first date, man, you're really something." Itachi smiled broadly while murmuring so softly that only the movement of his lips could be seen. In his mind, he gave Issei a thumbs up. After all, if you invite a girl to a luxury restaurant on the first date, she'll expect that level of treatment every time. Starting with something like KFC should be, well, right. Itachi believed so. However, Yuma narrowed her eyes slightly. A faint sense of danger coursed through her veins. Her pupils dilated as she stared at Issei with a dangerous look. Is this little shit really taking me to KFC on the first date? Yuma almost stomped the ground in frustration, but quickly composed herself and forced a cheerful smile. Acting like ungrateful bitch in front of Itachi? No way, she encouraged herself internally. The mission must be completed, Yuma said, placing a fist over her chest like she was pledging allegiance to a flag. Itachi and Issei looked at her, confused, as she lowered her head just as suddenly as she had looked toward the sky a moment earlier with determination. Did I say that out loud or just think it? Yuma now doubted her own sanity. Then she thought perhaps it was because Itachi was present that she'd let her mental guard down. Itachi smiled before placing a hand on Yuma's right shoulder. You said it out loud, Miss Chan. And yes, you also said the last part. Itachi sighed. To him, this probably assassin girl was like a rookie ninja who just killed someone from an enemy village. He felt that, if he wanted, he could kill Yuma in half a blink, hide the body, and no one would ever know. So he smiled quietly to himself, but even so, he didn't lower his guard. Yuma flinched, taking several steps back as she watched Itachi place his hand on her shoulder. She narrowed her eyes, clear doubt written on her face, and lifted a hand to push Itachi's hand away. What mission? Issei suddenly asked. Yuma stayed silent. Itachi stood still. Issei kept watching her. She really didn't know what to say. She lowered her head slightly, as if playing the shy girl, and waited a moment before lifting her face again. Her delicate expression now had a nearly natural blush on her cheeks. Her eyes, like lamps in the night, shone toward Issei. Her lips, red, plump, and sweet like fruit, were pressed together tightly. "WL?" she stammered, taking a step forward, her eyes locked onto her prey. I have a M mission too. T to kiss you." Yuma managed to act like a shy, love-struck girl almost too well. Issei's heart skipped a beat. His eyes immediately focused on Yuma's most prominent features. Then his gaze wandered mischievously across her body, those shiny lips, her beautiful expression, her silky hair cascading over her skin, her slightly exposed cleavage, her slim waist emphasizing wide hips, and those long, pale, delicate yet firm legs. Something stirred in Issei's pants as he struggled to maintain composure. "And Miss Yuma, Yuma stepped forward slowly, parting her lips slightly, revealing a hint of sweetness inside them, and looked at Issei like the most love-struck girl in the world. "Excellent," Itachi smiled to himself. His heart swelled with a sweet sense of victory, and he looked at Issei the way a father looks proudly at his son. He felt that, if he had ever gotten the chance to see Sasuke with a girlfriend, he would have been the happiest person in the world. He extended his left hand, grabbed Issei by the nape, and gently pushed him forward, like sending his son off to school. He tilted Issei's head slightly and guided him toward Yuma's lips. The scene was a delight, two young people, each with different convictions, one more romantic but the other more decisive when it truly mattered. And the girl, experienced but with little control over herself. Both, like two worlds separated by color and life, collided. Their lips nearly touched, pressed and brushed against each other in such a unique way that Itachi opened his eyes, a never-before-felt desire slowly blooming in his mind. Itachi watched, surprised, with clear eyes and a racing heart, as Issei and Yuma kissed. Then a soft embrace between them. Their lips so close that he could almost swear they had fused together. Almost by instinct, or perhaps newly awakened masculinity, Itachi experienced a minor issue, well, a small one in his pants. "Guys, I think that's enough," Itachi said after a while, noticing the park had emptied. Many people had left, murmuring things like "damn horny guys." Another moment passed, and Issei hugged Yuma tightly. Itachi sighed and gave him a slight pinch on the neck to make him stop. "Pin." "Ouch," Issei let out a yelp as he pulled away from Yuma, his eyes closing as he raised a hand to push away Itachi's mischievous grip. "You guys are too young. If you want to do that, there's always that place, a love hotel." "Ha ha ha ha." Itachi burst into laughter as Issei lowered his head, embarrassed. Yuma, on the other hand, was breathing heavily. She stared at Issei, her eyes full of disbelief. Why, she wondered. Why couldn't I use my strength, far beyond human, to break free? Then she looked at Itachi, laughing loudly, and a chill ran down her spine. Could Itachi have done something to me? Yuma narrowed her eyes. In fact, she had felt strange since the moment she first locked eyes with Itachi. At that moment, and after kissing a guy she considered trash, she realized something. She felt strange, like a different person inside her own body. I shouldn't continue with this. If I try anything, maybe. Yuma murmured so softly that only her lips were visibly moving. She let out a long sigh and calmed herself. Then she decided it was best to investigate who, or what, Itachi really was before continuing her mission. He must be someone special. After all, a human shouldn't be like him, Yuma thought, unable to find a proper explanation for the feelings overwhelming her heart, or why she suddenly felt so afraid and cautious around Itachi. Chapter 3: Encounter with the Fallen Angel. Yuma took a couple of steps back, almost unconsciously, when Itachi returned her gaze. However, before anything else could happen, Issei hurried to hug her and led her by the hand toward a small KFC restaurant. Several hours later, after the date had ended, Issei Hyoudou walked home quite satisfied. A mischievous smile stretched across his face. Some people instinctively moved away from wherever he passed, watching him with curious eyes. Back at the same park where they had been earlier, Yuma observed with narrowed eyes as Issei walked away. Perhaps it was simple disdain, or her sense of superiority as a fallen angel, but she truly felt she needed a bath and a deep facial cleanse right now. She turned around and stepped into the nearby forest, ready to return to her base and rid herself of the impurities on her body. However, the moment she entered the forest, her body froze completely. What? A trace of disbelief crossed Yuma's face. Her eyes opened wide as she quickly looked left and right, expecting to find her attacker. You won't be able to move. This is a binding genjutsu. You're now under my control. A calm voice echoed all around, sending a chilling fear through Yuma's body that reached her very bones. She swallowed hard, eyes dilated, as the boy she had seen earlier emerged from between the trees. But now, his eyes had changed, no longer the dark obsidian black, but a deep crimson red adorned with strange patterns. For the first time, she felt true inferiority. The world around her shifted. She found herself in a golden temple, the sunset painting the walls with a powerful orange hue. Standing on a platform ahead of her, like a king gazing upon a servant, was Uchiha Itachi. Her eyes were dazzled. Her heart sent repeated waves of blood to her brain, unable to fully process all the emotions and experiences flooding her at once. And amid the chaos in her body, only one thought echoed in her mind: as beautiful as a god. The light reflecting from behind Itachi slightly shadowed his face, branding itself into her mind like fire. Then her frown quickly turned into a peculiar smile. Her eyes welled up with tears, and almost immediately, a few drops rolled down her cheeks, flowing down her neck and between her cleavage. The illusion lasted almost as briefly as a mother's touch, impossible to measure in seconds, only in experience. Short in duration, yet infinite in emotional weight. I see, Itachi said once Yuma came out of the genjutsu. During that brief time she was trapped in the illusion, he had used the opportunity to extract information by subtly influencing her mind, and Yuma had no idea. Perhaps that's why, when she returned to the real world, she looked at Itachi with sparkling eyes and immediately opened her mouth. I want to exchange information with you, she blurted out quickly. She knew that what she knew about the fallen angels and sacred gears might be a bargaining chip for her freedom. However, Itachi merely smiled slightly. Exchange what? Ha ha ha. I've already obtained all the information, Miss Rainier. Itachi smiled again, watching her shocked expression with calm satisfaction. He nodded a couple of times. Yuma stammered, staring at Itachi. Dozens of questions ran through her mind. Who was he? Why? What did he just do? But before any of those questions could be answered, Itachi's body moved with such speed that he vanished from his position and reappeared in front of Rainier. Smack! Smack! He struck her several times in the triangle of death and the neck. The only sound was that of her being hit, like the crack of a whip amplified, before she collapsed to the ground, dead. Keeping you alive would have been troublesome. What a shame. Itachi lowered his head and gently brushed Rainier's hair before sighing with slight regret. He had, in fact, considered making her his subordinate. But after forcing her to confess everything within the genjutsu, he realized that was simply impossible. Rainier would never willingly submit to him. Perhaps he could have used genjutsu to alter her will, but that came with its own risks, especially since she answered to Cockabeel. Itachi wasn't certain whether Cockabeel would detect the manipulation if he kept her alive, so he decided not to take the chance. He killed Rainier and buried the body deep in the forest, taking care to cover all traces. The entire process took only about 15 minutes. And Itachi emerged from the forest clean and composed, a calm smile on his face, as if he hadn't just killed a beautiful girl with idol-like looks. The day was drawing to a close. The sun cast its golden light over the city, and Itachi strolled peacefully toward Issei's house. As he walked through Kuoh Park, a girl approached him with a flyer in her hands. "Excuse me, maybe you're interested in magic? Well, this is a way to contact a magical being who can grant you assistance. Please use it with caution," said a delicate girl with brown hair, handing him a red flyer with a strange symbol on it. Before, Itachi would have politely thanked her and tossed the flyer into the trash without much thought. But now, with all the knowledge he had extracted from Rainier, he could guess exactly who this flyer belonged to. The Gremory family. Itachi pondered for a moment, noticing how the girl blushed when he returned her gaze. "Thank you," he said warmly, pretending to tuck the flyer into his pocket, when in truth he disposed of it immediately. According to Rainier, Lucifer's younger sister is studying at Kuoh Academy. She runs a club about mysteries or magic and has several members. Itachi repeated the information in his mind as he walked the streets of Kuoh, watching the people, their lives, their faces, their smiles and frowns. Although he still felt amazed by the peace of this world, he still felt like a stranger in a foreign land. After passing by several homes, Itachi finally arrived at the Hyoudou residence. "Ah, little Itachi, you arrived right on time. Please, come in. Issei should be in his room." "I made your favorite dangos," said Mrs. Hyoudou, watering the garden as she noticed him approaching the front door. Her smile was genuine. She had known Itachi since he was a child and naturally didn't hesitate to invite him in. Itachi quickly accepted with a warm smile on his face. He greeted Mrs. Hyoudou and stepped inside, walking past several stairs until he reached Issei's room. Perhaps out of habit or muscle memory, Itachi made no noise as he walked. His breathing became nearly undetectable as he approached the room. Standing before the door, Uchiha Itachi, the boy who had just killed a fallen angel without blinking, truly smiled. Chapter 4, Telling the Truth to an Old Friend. Maybe it was just a simple coincidence that he met Issei when they were 2 years old, but Itachi had genuinely grown somewhat fond of the perverted young man. So, he lowered his head with a slight smile, then looked at the door and finally pushed it open. As the interior of the room was revealed, Itachi fell silent. He stared, almost with a stunned expression, at Issei, who was half naked and holding something between his legs with one hand while clutching a book in the other. "Wait, isn't that the school yearbook?" Itachi let out a half smile, watching the frozen Issei whose expression was stuck in time, before finally saying, "Hey bro, I came to visit." Itachi took a few steps forward and closed the door behind him. "Ayoche-chage." Issei let out the manliest scream of his life as he quickly covered himself with the blanket on his bed. He stared for a moment at the guy who had just walked in, his childhood friend, and then clenched his teeth in pure rage. "Itachi." Issei growled, grinding his teeth while his cheeks, now deeply flushed red, started to glow. "What the hell are you doing here?" He demanded an explanation, eyes blazing. "Well, I could tell you, but how about you put on some pants first?" Itachi smiled and sat down on a chair, turning his gaze toward the wall to give Issei some privacy. "HMPH." The poor guy muttered something unintelligible before quickly placing the yearbook on his nightstand and pulling on some blue pants. Then, like a girl who had just finished dressing for a date, he said, "I'm ready." Itachi stood from the chair, turned around, and looked at his friend, finally in a presentable state. Issei was still blushing and staring at him with a strange expression. Isn't that the look the Uchiha girls used to give me? Itachi thought, but then simply shook his head. Listen, Issei, I'm going to show you something special. Itachi smiled, took a quick step forward, his eyes glowing red, and gently pressed a finger to his friend's forehead. Genjutsu. Issei's mind was instantly taken over by Itachi and thrown into a magical world. There, he saw several scenes: Yuma, the girl he had been thinking about, fallen angels appearing, and finally, a flood of information given to him by Itachi in just a few seconds. Moments later, Issei blinked. He swallowed hard, a shiver ran down his body, and he lifted his gaze, his eyes now filled with indescribable emotions, locking onto Itachi's. Then he saw it. Itachi under the shining sun, its light behind him, casting a slight shadow over his face and making him look like a god, someone above all else. But of course, it was just an illusion. Issei blinked again and returned to his room. He swallowed once more, now just staring into the glowing three-tomo Sharingan of Itachi. A long moment of silence passed. The two of them stared at each other. It wasn't psychic or spiritual, but in that gaze, it was as if they were exchanging information without speaking. Issei nodded several times, and Itachi did the same, as if telling his foolish little friend. Yes, it's true. Everything you saw inside the genjutsu is real. And then Issei turned pale. He blinked, his eyes began to glisten, and his body trembled slightly. If what Itachi showed him was true, then the love, the fantasy, all those moments he imagined with Yuma were fake. Everything was a lie by Rainier. Right. 2 tears rolled down Issei's cheeks. His breathing grew a bit faster, and before he could say anything, Itachi placed a hand on his shoulder. You're growing up, bro. You know, sometimes I look at you and remember when you were just a mischievous little pervert. And now you've had your first heartbreak. It's all happening a little too fast. Itachi smiled, looking at Issei the way a father might look at his son. Issei bit his lip, gazing into Itachi's beautiful eyes, and finally nodded. How could he believe all that information from a genjutsu so easily? Simple. To Issei, Itachi was his childhood friend, the one who always protected him from bullies. Itachi wouldn't lie to him about something so sensitive, or at least, that's what Issei believed. But then yours. Issei narrowed his eyes, still in shock as he stared at his friend, especially his eyes. He swallowed again before asking, "What or who are you?" There was a brief silence. Itachi took a step back, placed his hands in his pockets, and simply said, "My name is Itachi Uchiha. I come from another world. I was a powerful ninja, and once I protected my village. It was a tragic story. I'll tell you the rest later." Hearing those words from his childhood friend was, to Issei, like having a mental bomb dropped on him. Like hearing your dad confess you're actually rich, and he was just testing you all those years. Issei's heart pounded so hard his brain began to overheat. But under the weight of such information, his mind just accepted it all without resistance. "I see, then thanks for saving me, Itachi." Issei smiled, showing his white teeth, as a beam of daylight slipped through the window behind him. After a moment where the two exchanged words and Issei asked a few questions, Itachi finally explained the reason he had come. According to Rainier's memories, you have something called a sacred gear, an artifact given by the God of the Bible to help humans fight against demons and fallen angels. Itachi's words immediately lit up Issei's face with genuine surprise. "Sacred gear?" Issei repeated. He had indeed received information about such a weapon during the illusion. Sacred gears, weapons created by God to give humans power, and now he had one. Issei almost felt a flicker of joy overpowering the sadness in his heart. Sadness born from the betrayal he had suffered thanks to Rainier. "Let me check," Itachi said, gently touching Issei's head and channeling chakra into his friend's body, searching for anything unusual. Eventually, Itachi found an anomaly in Issei's right arm. He couldn't quite understand what it was, but it felt like a pool of magic resting there, like water in a small pond. "Is this a sacred gear?" Itachi could feel the dormant power. It didn't react to chakra, and he couldn't measure its limits. Eventually, he withdrew his hand. "I think, yes, it's very likely that you have a sacred gear," he said, watching Issei's reaction. Contrary to what Itachi expected, the boy simply made a surprised face. That was it. Itachi had expected a more dramatic response, maybe laughter, jumping around, or shouting, but all he got was a slight twitch of surprise. "Something wrong?" Itachi asked. Issei simply shook his head. "Itachi, I know it sounds stupid since it was just a couple of days, but I think I truly loved Yuma," he murmured, lowering his head. "When I kissed her, I felt it, warmth, softness, the purity of a lady pressed against my lips. It felt like paradise, like I was overdosing on happiness. Every cell in my body danced to the rhythm of her breath." Issei smiled faintly after speaking. He lifted his head to stare at the ceiling and, after a moment, sighed. "I think I'll need time to get over this," he said, turning his gaze back to Itachi. "It may sound stupid, I know, but it was my first kiss. And even if it was fake, it still felt special." Itachi stared at Issei for a moment, then sighed. He honestly didn't know how to deal with love problems. The only girlfriend he ever had, Izumi, he killed her himself. Though before she died, he placed her in a genjutsu where they lived a whole lifetime together. But even that felt like a lie, a sweet one. "Well," Itachi let out a sigh with a small smile. "I don't really know how to handle love issues either. But hey, if it cheers you up, how about I help you with your work tomorrow?" Itachi smiled. Issei narrowed his eyes. "Work's what work. I'm a ninja, I'm taking you to see something. Beautiful, I guess." Itachi gave him a strange smile. Issei instantly picked up the hint and smiled, despite the sadness still lingering in his heart. "Promise?" Itachi, smiling back and placing a hand over his chest, replied. "I promise." Chapter 5, A Dangerous Illusion. Issei felt a sudden joy growing inside his heart like a weed. He looked at Itachi with a perverted smile before suddenly nodding. "Now, would you like to awaken the sacred gear within you?" Itachi asked, curious about Issei's response. "Well, I mean, sure, why not?" Issei smiled. Itachi's face quickly changed from calm and smiling to serious. He knew the only method to awaken the sacred gear known by Rainier was dangerous. It would bring Issei to the edge between life and death. Naturally, Itachi would not attack Issei, but he could take him into an illusion where he would be on the brink of death. Itachi closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. "Issei, you will suffer a little because of this, but it is necessary." Itachi smiled and sent Issei once again into a genjutsu. Issei was transported to a strange world. The sky was painted an intense red, the surroundings seemed almost colorless, and everything was in shades of black and white. "What is this?" Issei wondered as a sudden overwhelming sensation hit his heart. "Strike." Issei instinctively dodged a blow that would have killed him instantly. He quickly turned around and looked at the person who tried to attack him. His eyes widened, his body chilled, and his mind almost received a shock that would put him to sleep. As he stared in absolute surprise, he couldn't help but take a step back. "Yuma!" Issei shouted, looking at the beautiful girl before him. She held a kitchen knife and stared at him with cold eyes. "Why, what the hell is going on?" Issei couldn't believe it. Didn't Itachi say he killed Rainier? He quickly looked left and right, trying to find any sign of Itachi, but it was impossible. Only he and Rainier seemed to be in this place. "My room, Itachi." Issei asked himself several times, but received no answer. Instead, Rainier charged again with the knife towards him. "Shit!" Issei dodged quickly, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. As the knife passed near his face, its blade slightly cut his cheek, scattering drops of blood in the air. "Itachi!" Issei shouted with all his strength, trying to contact his friend, but nothing happened. He breathed heavily, his eyes dilated, his mind focused only on the girl in front of him. While that happened, she charged forward again. Issei thought of several possibilities: knock Rainier down, dodge, hit her, or try to grab her hand holding the knife. However, none of these resulted in action. Instead, Issei turned around. His body felt a brutal cocktail of emotions, making his skin crawl. Yet, even though his body accelerated at a speed that would outrun a marathoner, Rainier caught him. She stabbed the knife into his back with such agility and skill she could be considered an expert swordswoman. "Ag!" Issei screamed loudly as he fell to the ground. He stretched out his hand forward, as if hoping for something in front of him. But before that happened, another knife pierced his back again. Ag, Issei yelled, his moans and cries of desperation clearly audible while in his mind, he thought something else, something different between life and death. From his mouth only came one question. Where is Itachi? Before he could even feel he was about to die, a strange energy bathed his entire body. Boy, looks like you need some help, The voice stopped mid-sentence as if surprised. What is this? The strange voice asked with disbelief. Outside Issei's illusion, Itachi saw a red gauntlet with a scarlet gem materialize on Issei's right arm. From this gauntlet, a voice emerged almost as quickly as the glove appeared. What are you? The voice asked, magnetic, deep, and full of power, disbelief clear in its tone. Hello, my name is Itachi Uchiha. You are the sacred gear of my friend. Itachi smiled, seeing the dragon-shaped gauntlet. By the way, that was an illusion to awaken you, Itachi quickly clarified. There was a brief silence. The gauntlet glowed a couple of times, then Issei blinked. The poor boy startled, and was about to run again, when Itachi used a restraining genjutsu on Issei so he could not walk or move. I see you finally awakened it. You see. Itachi began explaining how he used a genjutsu to bring Issei between life and death so he would awaken the sacred gear. After a few moments, Issei finally nodded, and Itachi released the restraints. Then, to Itachi's surprise, Issei suddenly moved, his arm tensed, and he launched a punch toward Itachi. But Itachi simply raised his left hand, grabbed Issei's gauntlet, and stopped his blow. You could have warned me, you damn son of a bitch. Issei shouted with barely contained rage. However, Itachi sighed again, and started a long explanation about why that wouldn't work since Issei was prepared, and knew it was all a lie. In the end, after the talk, Issei finally calmed down. Thanks to that, the gauntlet's voice emerged again. I've heard everything, gentlemen, I must say. The voice paused. It's incredible, hahaha. I mean, I have never seen anything like you, Sir Itachi. My name is D-Drake, but you can call me Red. Nodding, Itachi listened to D-Drake's introduction, squinting briefly before opening his mouth. What exactly are you? Itachi asked, though he knew the answer, he really wanted to hear it. I am the Red Dragon Emperor, one of the 12 Longinus, and also the sacred gear of this boy. D-Drake began explaining everything that had happened and his ongoing resentment and battles against the White Dragon Emperor. Finally, after more conversation, Itachi understood in more detail what the supernatural world truly is, just like Issei. Both looked at each other with serious faces and nodded. So now you answer, Sir Itachi. What are you? D-Drake asked, genuinely feeling a strange and powerful energy emanating from Itachi, something never seen before, naturally awakening his curiosity. I am human, Itachi smiled. A moment later, Issei couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, bad joke, I know. I mean, I'm Itachi Uchiha, a ninja from another world. D-Drake listened, unsure whether to be angry or curious, so he remained silent for a moment. Then I think I understand. Well, actually, that's not important. You, Itachi, can you help this trash kid gain power? D-Drake asked eagerly. The White has awakened several years ago, and I'm really at a disadvantage in this reincarnation, so? D-Drake spoke again. Though he could train Issei himself, the sudden appearance of Itachi raised new expectations in his mind. There was a brief moment of silence in which Itachi looked at the gauntlet, and it seemed to return his gaze. Itachi scratched his head as if doubting, then finally opened his mouth. Sure, why not? Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Itachi looked at Issei. I received a paper with something like a pentagram drawn on it in the park. It was strange, and according to my new knowledge, I can say it belongs to the Gremory family. They are demons. Itachi sighed after speaking. If you receive any like that, it's better you throw them away. Contracts with demons never end well, he said, recalling some forbidden jutsus from his old world. Chapter 6, Issei's Desire. The next day. Finally, we have done it, bro. What do you think? Issei glanced furtively at the girls in the distance, his eyes almost filled with a particular intention as they briefly shifted toward Itachi to his right. Well, I must say I never saw someone like this. Itachi shook his head with resignation. Actually, I saw much more than this during my 2 lives, so it's not like I feel surprised or anything. He simply sighed, looking at his friend like a man looks at a child. However, Issei quickly looked back down, observing an almost inhuman amount of exposed skin. Both were standing on top of the fake ceiling of the girls' bathroom at Kuoh Academy. A few days had passed since Itachi promised to train Issei, and although he was creating a training plan for him, he still decided to keep the promise he made to his friend after that genjutsu. Issei looked like a hungry beast. His almost dilated eyes focused on every movement of the beautiful girls in the bathroom, watching them with a particular desire that sparked curiosity in Itachi's heart. Can women provoke such desire in a man? Itachi wondered, perhaps because of his former life as a ninja full of discipline, or because in the world he came from discipline was instilled from youth. But Itachi swore that even Jiraiya, the old pervert, would fall short compared to Issei. He had never seen such a reaction in a man upon seeing a naked woman, so he simply continued observing his friend. Issei's expression was of absolute desire. Itachi even thought the nails on his fingers grew like a predator's claws, the hairs on his skin stood up, while his overall appearance was nothing less than that of a wolf about to die of hunger seeing a feast. Itachi really didn't understand it. He watched, almost captivated by seeing a strange creature. For him, a ninja, a woman was just that. A prettier face, a more voluptuous body, a younger girl. In reality, Itachi was right. In the end, the skin of a fat woman is just skin like the skin of a supermodel. The reproductive system of an unattractive woman is just as much a reproductive system as that of a supermodel. In the end, both are humans. However, one triggers a fervent desire in men, and the other, well, generates rejection. Itachi thought this is due to men's evolutionary traits prioritizing wide hips for good childbirth, large breasts for baby survival, and a pretty face as a marker of better genetics to pass on to the next generation. Still, Issei's desire when seeing beautiful naked girls exceeded Itachi's expectations. Why is it not the same to touch an ugly girl as a pretty girl? Both are made of the same thing, skin, bones, cells, so why does a pretty girl excite you so much? Itachi asked, although he knew the answer, he wanted to hear it from his good friend's mouth. However, Issei ignored him. He remained absorbed, with a lost gaze, a pounding heart, and a busy brain. Itachi even thought he saw something hard pressing against Issei's pants from the inside. Time passed, and when the girls finally left the bathroom, Issei regained his usual calm. He breathed heavily and took a deep breath before calming down. Well, bro, it's actually hard to explain. I mean, I had never really thought about it, Issei said, surprised by Itachi's question. Why does his body react differently to a pretty girl than to an ugly girl if both are made of the same essence? It's a stupid question, really, but Issei had never considered it, and the more he thought about it, the more stupid it seemed. Isn't it obvious, bro? It's because pretty girls are pretty girls, and an ugly girl is, well, an ugly girl. Issei's answer made Itachi shake his head. In my old world, you wouldn't have survived even a couple of days, I guess. Itachi smiled before putting a hand on Issei's head and starting to ruffle his hair. The poor boy seemed insulted. He quickly turned to look at Itachi with an angry face, about to push Itachi's hand and start a fight, but his body did not obey him. Sharingan, Issei murmured. He had learned that Itachi's eyes, Sharingan, granted such ability, so he could only watch, unable to move, as Itachi ruffled his hair. However, it's fine. I mean, I wouldn't want you to become insensitive to girls, ha ha ha. Itachi smiled, perhaps recalling the face of his little brother who was always a fuckboy unconsciously. Bro, why don't you get excited when you see beautiful naked girls? Issei asked, curious. His almost shining eyes looked at Itachi and showed genuine curiosity inside him. Itachi thought for a moment. He really thought about it, brought a hand to his head, and squinted his eyes. He really didn't know the reason, maybe, first of all, it was because of his ninja training focused on discipline. Maybe it's because I have a lot of girls available. I mean, if I say something, they'll come to me, Itachi said, smiling, remembering what he once read in a book on the subway. When you have something in abundance, that something stops being valuable. He repeated the same words written in that book. His little and foolish friend nodded several times, trying to understand the wisdom in those simple words. Don't you understand? Since you don't have any beautiful girls, you think they are worth more than you, so you put them on a pedestal? Itachi smiles. But if you had many beautiful girls, they would be the ones putting you on a pedestal. Time passed quickly, and soon classes started again in the afternoon. Itachi, as always, said goodbye to Issei before returning to his classroom. He was ready to sit in a corner, contemplate the forest through the window, and simply wait for class to end when someone suddenly blocked his way. Itachi, it's a pleasure to see you again. Itachi turned to the girl who suddenly approached him. She had long, straight black hair, an elegant figure, glasses matching her pretty face, white and smooth skin, and a gentle appearance resembling a secretary. Miss Tsubaki, Itachi smiled, closed his eyes for a moment before showing a slight smile. What do you need from me? He said, after all, although this girl, Tsubaki Shinra, was part of his class, they don't talk much. Well, actually, I would like to know if you would like. She blushed slightly. Her eyes wandered from Itachi's perfect face to his body. Tea to go out with me? She finally asked, lowering her head slightly. Itachi remained silent, observing the delicate and beautiful girl standing in front of him for a moment before saying, no, and simply taking a seat in a corner. Tsubaki Shinra's heart took a blow. Her body was flooded with an unpleasant electricity while her mind collapsed. However, Itachi really stayed thinking for a moment. It's because I have too many options. Itachi smiled, thinking about his earlier words. It's better if I train Issei as soon as possible to avoid some problems, Itachi thought. After all, after learning about the existence of the supernatural, he really viewed this world from another perspective. He watched Tsubaki Shinra, not far away, walk depressed to a desk, and his clear eyes quickly caught the strangeness in this girl. She should be someone supernatural, he murmured in his mind. Chapter 7, Temptations. Maybe it's because girls are abundant for me. Issei pondered Itachi's words for a moment as he made his way to class. In truth, he was a bit curious about how easily Itachi seemed to brush women off. It doesn't really seem like things are as simple as Itachi thinks, Issei murmured internally. After all, he too had been with a girl, even if just for a short while. A beautiful girl, Yuma, who turned out to be nothing more than a fallen angel trying to kill him. Although his shattered illusion of being loved by Rainier had left a mark on his heart, Issei tried to ignore the feeling as he walked into the classroom, glancing around at the other students. You finally made it, Brutilda, a slightly cute girl with braids and glasses greeted him. Her voice stirred a faint warmth and nostalgic feeling in Issei. Kuryu, it's always a curse to see you, Issei grinned, watching the slim girl approach with enthusiasm. She gave him a hug and smiled brightly in return. For his part, Issei simply endured it. After all, this girl had originally become his friend because he always hung out with Itachi. So, wasn't she just trying to get closer to Itachi through him? Issei, I actually have something for you today, Kuryu said before launching into a rant about how men should act more like beasts around women, dominate them, etc. Issei had long since grown used to Kuryu and her strange antics. Even though she initially approached him for Itachi, over time, they'd genuinely become good friends. For Issei, today was a bit of a tough day. It was the day their entire class had to head down to the gym for physical training, possibly even sparring. After chatting with Kuryu for a bit, class began and the students made their way to the academy gym. On the way there, Issei was unusually quiet. He felt something off today, unusual, strange, like he was being watched. Your mental state isn't great right now. It seems that girl, Rainier, left quite a wound in your mind. My advice is to stay away from temptations for a while and focus on healing your heart. D-Drake's deep voice echoed in his mind, but Issei ignored him. He knew that already. Thud. Thud. The group finally reached the gym, and as soon as they entered the usual noisy environment, the talking, the footsteps, suddenly stopped. From his position, Issei watched as all his classmates froze in place like puppets without batteries. A strange feeling swept through him as he narrowed his eyes at the scene. Huh? He muttered in confusion. Curious, he stepped forward to get a clearer view of what everyone was staring at. Issei's eyes widened in shock, his hair standing on end. His body reacted like a primitive man, blood rushing to his lower half as he beheld the scene before him. In the massive gym on the basketball court, two women, no, two goddesses in Issei's eyes, were playing a casual game. He watched, completely entranced by their every movement, by every frame of the scene, every delicate flicker of motion from the two goddesses before him. One girl with black hair tied into a ponytail moved with incredible agility. Her skin was flawless, like a doll's. Her features, her eyes, nose, lips, perfectly symmetrical. Natural red lips, sclera white as milk, and irises that reflected the entire universe. And the other, equally or even more enchanting, had white hair, cat-like eyes, and a body that, though lacking in certain meaty areas, sparked strange emotions within Issei's body. Akino Himejima and Kaneko, two famous girls. Akino moved with grace, her large breasts bouncing with every step, stretching and rebounding like tethered ping-pong balls. Her thighs moved in a hypnotic rhythm. Kaneko's body was different. She didn't arouse lust so much as she inspired affection. Her warm appearance made her seem adorable, like a pet one would never dream of harming. To Issei, they weren't just women, they were goddesses. It was then that he finally understood the difference between himself and Itachi. He recalled something Itachi once told him when Ria's gremmerie passed by them in the hallway. She's just a woman, Issei. Her skin is just skin like any other girl. Her bones are bones like any other. If I cut her in half, she'd bleed the same. She goes to the bathroom too. Her skin has as many germs as mine, and her insides are just as full of waste. So why should I treat her like a princess? Issei had never truly understood those words. How could someone as smart as Itachi not grasp the beauty of goddesses? How could someone as powerful as Itachi not understand the allure of a woman, the artistry behind a perfectly sculpted body? Issei shook his head like a drill, genuinely disappointed in Itachi. If Itachi was so amazing, then why couldn't he see the beauty of women? Issei sighed, somewhat annoyed. How could the skin of an ugly girl be the same as a beautiful one? How could her bones be the same? Her blood? Impossible, he thought. Maybe I can teach him a different way to look at life. Issei smirked arrogantly, licked his lips, and kept watching like a wolf ready to pounce on prey. It didn't take long for the two girls to stop playing. They looked at the gathered students and smiled before walking toward them. Hello, we'll be in charge of today's physical training. Akino Himejima called out with enthusiasm, her smile radiating and her teeth gleaming. Yaechiae, Is, and the other boys shouted, though of course, their eyes were entirely focused on Akino's chest bouncing like two water balloons. Akino, though smiling, felt no emotion in her heart. She was only here on orders from her leader, Ria's gremmerie. For the past few days, Rias had sensed something strange about Issei. At first, she thought it was just the stress of her workload, maybe her imagination. But that morning, Rias woke up in a strange mood. Akino remembered her frowning constantly and staring out the window. When Akino asked why, Rias simply replied, "Something's off. I feel weird, like something that shouldn't have happened. I can't explain it." So she was given the mission to investigate Issei more closely. Now, watching Issei staring at her like a starving beast, Akino simply shook her head internally. She was used to this type of man. She had seen so many like Issei, men who praised her beauty, valued only her looks, that she had grown tired of them. It was always the same. "You're so pretty, you're so beautiful." She had heard it so many times, she didn't understand why some girls still got so excited when a guy said that. Probably because they're so ugly that a simple "you're so pretty" means the world to them, Akino thought almost unconsciously. After all, those kinds of girls didn't get compliments often. Akino stepped forward. "What's your name, little one?" she asked. Issei immediately stopped drooling and straightened up like a soldier, shouting, "Issei Hyoudou, my lady." Akino almost burst out laughing at his exaggerated presentation. She hid her sudden laughter with a coquettish smile, covering her lips with her right hand. "Cute name, Issei. Help me with class today," she ordered, and Issei nodded without hesitation. After all, Issei felt extremely lucky. Helping someone like Akino during gym class? I'll get to be near this goddess, he thought, euphoric. A few grinding teeth could be heard from nearby boys. After all, it seemed like today, Issei would be the envy of the entire class. Chapter 8, The Rabbit in the Trap. After a couple of hours, Akino Himejima walked back to the Occult Research Club. She had gathered some important information. Actually, a lot of it had been revealed easily by Issei Hyoudou himself. Akino smiled, satisfied. She liked it when things went smoothly, and even more so when she could reaffirm her own beauty. I can't believe he revealed all this so easily, Akino murmured before opening the clubroom door. As soon as she stepped into the room, she saw her friend Ria's Gremory staring out the window, her eyes focused on something strange in the distance. "President," she said with a smile, her heart beating a little faster than usual, her eyes shining. She didn't like seeing her friend in that state and thought the new information she brought might cheer her up. The Gremory princess turned from watching the pedestrians on the street to her friend. Akino, excited, took several steps forward, momentarily losing the composure of a refined lady. "I've discovered something important about Issei Hyoudou." Ria's eyes immediately focused on her friend's cleavage. One of the buttons of her shirt, which held back her large breasts, was missing. Akino's cleavage was slightly visible, or rather, her pink bra and a bit of the white skin it covered could be seen, barely concealed by the ribbon still tied at her neck. "Akino," Rias lifted her head, curious. "What the hell have you been doing?" She tapped the desk lightly, unable to believe her friend had walked around the academy in that state. What would happen to the reputation she had worked so hard to build? Surely, several students were now whispering about Akino's slightly visible cleavage. However, the tall, black-haired girl didn't understand. She tilted her head in confusion, and Rias narrowed her eyes, pointing at Akino's chest, making her look down. Issei, back in his classroom, smirked maliciously. In his hands was a white button that still carried a faint scent of roses. His white teeth showing, he couldn't help but chuckle softly, and at that moment, a sharp scream echoed from afar. "Huh?" Issei looked up, as did the rest of the class. "What was that scream?" "That bastard took advantage and ripped a button off my chest." Akino gritted her teeth in anger, her face completely flushed, teeth clenched, while Ria's Gremory smiled wickedly behind her. "Huh, could it be? My dear girl was fooled by a bad boy?" A mischievous grin spread across Ria's Gremory's face. "Heh, looks like you're going to get a new nickname at the academy. Ha ha ha." She couldn't stop herself from bursting out laughing. "Shut up," Akino covered her ears, refusing to hear her friend's words. She was truly, utterly shocked. She hadn't even noticed when Issei had done it. Even though she was angry, Akino was also stunned inside. "I'm a demon. How did a human do that without me noticing?" she wondered, completely lost in that and other thoughts. A few moments later, Akino calmed down and began recounting her encounter with Issei Hyoudou. "Is it really how you say?" Rias asked. She had returned to her classic chair behind her desk, gazing out the window as she questioned her. "Yes, President, I honestly don't know if the guy is an idiot, or if he simply trusts his sacred gear so much that he doesn't fear telling me about it," Akino confirmed. Akino hadn't asked explicitly about any sacred gear, but had probed the topic with various questions. Yet Issei, eager to impress her, told her about summoning a powerful gauntlet and about a dragon hidden in his body. "A red gauntlet and a dragon, huh? Sounds like the Red Dragon Emperor, though we can't confirm it, he might just be." Rias turned her chair to look at Akino. "Lying, you know how boys often do that to impress girls." However, Akino shook her head repeatedly at her friend's suggestion. "Impossible." That declaration piqued Ria's curiosity. She raised an eyebrow. "You see, President, I'm quite perceptive, and I can clearly tell when someone is lying." And Issei wasn't lying. A brief silence fell between the two as they stared at each other. "Is that so?" Ria's Gremory finally asked with a smile. At that moment, a white-haired girl entered the club. "President, Akino got some juicy info in exchange for her body. Just like a red light district worker admirable." Kaneko, with her usual serious expression and cute face, boldly said while pointing at Akino accusingly. Once again, Ria's Gremory burst into laughter, while Akino turned around in anger. "You," The black-haired girl was about to charge forward and teach Kaneko a lesson, but the smaller girl quickly moved behind Ria's gremmery for protection. Hours flew by and soon class ended. The students returned to their homes. "You told that girl about my existence, boy. You are," D-Drake muttered with displeasure inside Issei's mind. But Issei just sighed. "Well, it was heat of the moment. I mean, Akino is just so beautiful that." Sigh. D-Drake's disappointed sigh echoed in Issei's head, creating a strange discomfort in the boy. He really felt attacked, so he narrowed his eyes. "You know, it's complicated for me. I really miss Yuma, I mean Rainier. And when I saw Akino, Issei hesitated for a moment, speaking to himself. They look so much alike. There was a brief silence after that thought. "No, they don't, Issei. You're just making excuses. I only hope this doesn't become too dangerous," D-Drake said, then went quiet again. "Excuse me, are you interested in magic?" Before Issei could say anything more to D-Drake, a beautiful girl approached him with a pamphlet. "You know, you're so handsome that." She didn't need to say much before Issei accepted the pamphlet, which had a red pentagram drawn on it. He stayed a moment longer to talk to the girl, and by the time he left, it was nearly nightfall and the temperature was dropping. "I don't think demon girls are so evil that they can't see I don't want to hurt them." In his room, Issei muttered. He looked at the pamphlet. Thanks to the knowledge passed to him by Itachi, he knew it belonged to the Gremmery family, probably from Ria's gremmery at Kuoh Academy. "HMPH?" Issei murmured. In fact, he wasn't as dumb as he seemed. He knew Akino was a demon and Ria's gremmery too. After all, his perception had greatly increased thanks to D-Drake. "They don't seem like bad girls," Issei said. He also knew demons recruited people to join them, and that Ria's gremmery was likely looking for talented individuals. Issei stroked his right arm. The red dragon hadn't said anything since scolding him earlier that day. Then he looked at the pamphlet again, at the red pentagram drawn on it. Itachi's image came to his mind, how the girls at school saw him as some kind of K-pop idol. At first, Issei had asked himself, why? Why was Itachi so popular? Was it because he was handsome? That seemed like the answer, but not the whole truth. Issei had realized something days ago. Itachi wasn't just handsome. He was strong, charismatic, cold, and indifferent. "I can't be any of those things," Issei murmured, eyes gazing coldly at the pamphlet in his hands. "But I can be strong. I have the Red Dragon Emperor, and maybe I could have someone like Yuma by my side." He smiled. "Who doesn't want a strong man?" Issei encouraged himself before using the pamphlet to summon a demon, just as the girl who gave it to him had described. Chapter 9, Regret. After a few quick and simple movements, Issei finally activated the pamphlet. His eyes were expectant, his heart beating a little too fast, all while a slight smile stretched across his face. What will come out? Issei wondered. He asked himself whether the Gremmery Princess or the goddess Akino would appear. He swallowed hard, continued watching, and as he did, D-Drake's voice once again echoed in his mind. "Not only have you revealed Yout identity as a sacred gear wielder, but now you've called demons to your very doorstep." D-Drake sounded weary, not angry, not scolding, just absolutely disappointed. "You know, in all the time I've reincarnated, I've never found a boy as stupid as you, Issei Hyoudou. Do you know what's going to happen when the demons arrive?" D-Drake asked. Issei didn't respond, so the dragon answered his own question. "You'll become a slave to a demon. That's what usually happens. Even if you're lucky enough to get a kind master, you'll still be a servant. All for what? A bit of acceptance from some girls who don't even think about you." Now D-Drake sounded truly upset, almost shouting inside Issei's mind. But after that, he simply went quiet, deciding to watch what fate awaited his host. In his mind, though, D-Drake had already written Issei off as hopeless trash. After a faint red glow, a beautiful girl emerged, or rather, materialized in front of Issei. Her long, abundant red hair reached her back, every strand perfectly defined. Her green eyes sparkled with life, her nose was flawless, lips naturally red, skin stunningly smooth, and her body sculpted. Every part of her seemed custom-crafted by an NSFW artist. Every curve designed to awaken desire and longing. Every part of her was, in itself, beautiful. Issei stared, his eyes wandering across Ria's Gremory's body with euphoria, with emotion. And even though the girl was looking directly at him, he didn't hide his intentions. "Hi, are you Issei Hyoudou?" Rias asked gently, her voice kind and sweet. Full of youthful energy, she looked at Issei and gave a soft smile. Her thoughts remained a mystery. "Lady Gremory," Issei smiled. He saw the calm and kind smile on Ria's face and his heart skipped a beat. His mind melted at the sight. "It's a goddess smiling," Issei whispered in his thoughts. With a warmth and sweetness nearly unmatched, Issei stepped forward. "Rias Gremory, it's a pleasure to see you here," he practically shouted, too enthusiastically. "Hee, were you expecting me? Looks like you know who I am." Rias smiled, lifting one hand to gently pat Issei's head. "You're a cute boy." Her lips curved into an even warmer smile. I thought this would be harder," Rias thought. After all, in front of her stood a potential host of a heavenly dragon. She'd heard from other demons that humans were arrogant, that getting a good sacred gear host cost a lot of money, and they always demanded many benefits. But Rias didn't believe that. The boy before her, Issei Hyoudou, seemed like a sweet boy, pleasant to look at, and with a head that was easy to pat. "Thank you, Miss Rias," Issei murmured, his heart overwhelmed by the sweet words of the goddess before him. "I assume you know about us, supernatural beings. So would you—" Before she could finish, Issei shouted an energetic yes. There was a brief moment of silence. Rias watched the poor boy, slightly bowed forward, pressing his head gently into her hand, as if begging for more pats. Why, she wondered, somehow this didn't feel like how things were supposed to go. Still, she smiled. "You didn't even hesitate, hee." She paused, bringing a finger to her lips. Well, you're definitely a cute boy. You know there are few men like you these days." Issei felt like he was in heaven after hearing Ria's words. Didn't that mean she valued his commitment and willingness? "By the way, I need you to tell me about your sacred gear and how you awakened it. Don't skip the details," Rias said. She stopped patting Issei's head and sat on his bed, lightly patting the spot beside her as if calling him over. Issei, initially sad to have lost that heavenly head pat, perked up quickly when he saw his goddess smiling and inviting him to sit beside her. Then, Issei began to tell a made-up story. How he had almost died at the hands of a fallen angel, how he awakened his sacred gear in that moment, defeated Rainier, buried her in a nearby forest, and learned all about the supernatural world through D-Drag. In front of his goddess, Issei lied. He said nothing about Itachi. He crafted an easy-to-believe story and smiled. After some time, and after showing Rias the boosted gear, she nodded and said, "I see," with a smile. "You are, at the end of the day, amazing, Issei Hyoudou," Rias complimented him, watching his joyful reaction for a moment before continuing. "You know, making you part of my peerage today might be the wisest decision I've made in my life," she spoke seriously. Rias Gremory saw Issei as a sweet, approachable boy, someone easy to talk to. Definitely a good friend, and a good servant. Issei thanked Rias for her words. Then, without hesitation, they began the recruitment process. The girl used several pawn pieces to reincarnate Issei as a demon and make him part of her peerage. Then, with a smile and leaning slightly toward him, she left through a magic portal, not without telling Issei that his demon training would begin next week, and he should report to the Occult Research Club starting next Monday. Issei felt a faint sense of achievement in his heart. He threw himself onto his soft bed and buried his face in the pillows, thinking that his future might turn out well at Rias Gremory's side. "What will you do about Itachi?" D-Drag suddenly asked, his voice devoid of any emotion. Issei thought for a moment, lifted his head, rolled onto his back to stare at the ceiling, and sighed with a bit of resignation before speaking. "I think I'll have to tell him we can't hang out as often as we used to," Issei murmured, a trace of nostalgia, sadness, and anxiety running through him. After all, at school and even outside of it, he used to meet up with Itachi all the time, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to explore new places in Kuoh City. "Do you think Itachi would want to join Lady Grimo?" Before Issei could finish, D-Drag quickly cut him off. "Impossible. Itachi isn't that kind of man. Besides, if what he says is true, he's from another world. He wouldn't need to be anyone's servant." Issei squinted his eyes, blinked a few times, and sighed again. I want to fulfill my dreams, D-Drake. Will you help me? He asked within his mind, but got no answer. Rainier, Issei finally murmured after a moment, his eyes glinting slightly as a smile stretched across his face. His fingers gently touched his lips as he remembered the kiss between him and Rainier, a kiss that felt more real than life itself. Do you think I'll meet someone like Rainier again now that I'm a demon? Issei asked, but D-Drake remained silent. The boy let out a long sigh this time, chuckled softly as he wiped the moisture from his eyes. Akino kinda looks like Rainier, don't you think? Besides, she doesn't seem like a bad girl. Well, at least I don't think she's trying to kill me, ha ha ha. Issei laughed at his own joke. Still, D-Drake said nothing. If you keep ignoring me, I'll end up thinking I'm crazy, that you don't exist, that I made you up in my head, Issei finally murmured. Well, no, just kidding, ha ha ha. He laughed again. Soon, the boy shook his head, got up quickly, stretched his body, and smiled even wider. Mom must be waiting for me with dinner ready. Chapter 10, Itachi makes a move. Days later. In a forest not too far away, Itachi watched Issei from a distance. The boy was doing a few warm-up push-ups. In truth, Itachi intended to test whether his good friend could use chakra like he could. It was a thought that had been lingering in his mind for a few hours, and now he was eager to try it. Issei, Itachi called out to his good friend. Issei quickly got up and ran toward him, stopping a few feet away and, like a rookie soldier, gave a slight military salute. Issei reporting for training, my lord. There was a brief silence after Issei spoke in the third person. The ninja looked at him with curious eyes and a smile on his face. Did you watch that military movie yesterday or something? I've noticed you acting a little weird lately, he asked, to which Issei nodded, slightly embarrassed, looking off to the side with some shame. Listen, forget it. Look, I was thinking about something, Itachi said before beginning to talk to Issei about the use of chakra, something like the mixture between spiritual energy and vitality. However, no matter how many hours passed, Issei couldn't grasp the theory of chakra. So, as a proper ninja, Itachi hit him a few times to stimulate him. Although the ninja wasn't necessarily a supernatural being, he knew something had changed in Issei in recent days. The boy simply seemed different. Still, he waited for him to speak up about his problems on his own. I really can't. I don't get it, the theory, the chakra, or whatever you call it, Issei said. There were a few bruises on his stomach, chest, and legs, but for him, understanding the chakra theory felt impossible. Itachi looked at his good friend, lying there, tired, eyes shiny and wet, nearly passing out from exhaustion. Still, his heart didn't soften. If Issei couldn't grasp chakra, then what was the point of having him as a student? Bro, HMPH. Issei hesitated for a moment, looking at Itachi with guilt before speaking. The demons, well, I don't think demons are really all that bad. Issei swallowed hard, looked at Itachi, and finally let out a long sigh. I summoned a demon and became part of her peerage. I think she's different from the demons I remember through Rainier. She's beautiful. There was a brief silence after Issei's words. Itachi's eyes narrowed slightly as he just stared at him, tired and embarrassed. I see, Itachi said after a moment. He wasn't surprised by Issei's words, but still, he kept watching him with a sense of calm and, of course, disappointment. Issei clenched his teeth, squinted, and looked at Itachi. Why was he looking at him like that? He felt offended. He really didn't understand. Itachi, his bro, had said so much about what a good ninja should be. Why wasn't he scolding him? Why wasn't he hitting him? Issei felt like if Itachi had hit him and yelled at him for making a mistake, at least that would hurt less than the way he was looking at him. So how did it happen? Itachi finally asked. The poor boy sighed to calm himself a little before opening his mouth. Issei began telling the story of his encounter with Ria's grimoire. From how he received a pamphlet with a kind of red pentagram on it, to how he activated it, and finally how he became a demon. However, despite the previous excitement he had felt when joining Ria's peerage and imagining a future full of beautiful girls, in that moment, standing in front of Itachi, the only thing he felt was shame. He felt like a child who acted without considering the consequences. No matter how much an adult warned him, curiosity gnawed at his conscience and pushed him into actions he'd soon regret. Issei felt like that mischievous child. He sighed, still bruised, and lifted his head to try and catch some kind of expression on Itachi's face. But Issei didn't see anger. Instead, he saw a calm almost without precedent, a neutral face, neither happy nor angry. Itachi was simply looking at him, as if waiting for him to continue. "It would be best if we didn't talk so often, Itachi. I don't want the demons to notice anything strange about you," Issei said, feeling genuine concern for his friend. There was another moment of silence. Itachi just looked at Issei for a few seconds. Then, as if he'd reached a conclusion, he finally opened his mouth. "Actually, I already knew," he murmured, surprising Issei. Then Itachi swiftly moved his right hand, and a kunai shot out like a bullet, slicing through the air and landing in a thick bush not far away. "Why don't you come out? You've been watching for quite some time," Itachi said aloud, not even turning his head toward the bush. He just stood there, facing Issei with a calm expression. A wave of uncertainty hit Issei's already chaotic body, overwhelming him with emotion once again. He saw a blonde-haired man in elegant clothes emerge from the bush where Itachi had thrown the kunai. He knew that guy. He would never forget that unpleasantly perfect face, defined features, a resolute gaze, youthful eyes full of energy, all matched with a slim body and a stare that could melt any girl's heart. Hyoudou Kiba stepped out of the bushes, a thin cut on his right cheek from which a bit of blood had briefly flowed before closing up. "You're Itachi from Kuoh Academy," Kiba said, keeping his distance. Although his face appeared calm, his body betrayed him and revealed his true emotions. Hyoudou Kiba was not just afraid, he was terrified. "You've been spying on us for hours. I'm guessing you're here on behalf of the Gremory family or something," Itachi said, watching Kiba. In fact, when he spoke, his voice changed completely. His teenage voice suddenly shifted to that of a man over 20. His tone, pitch, depth, even the look in his eyes changed completely when speaking to Kiba. The blonde's face shifted from calm to surprise, then finally settled into a frown. He had received orders from Ria's Gremory to keep an eye on Issei Hyoudou. His mission had nothing to do with Itachi, who had always maintained a low profile and was far from suspicious. That was what shocked him most, seeing Itachi, who had the aura of a normal human, throw a strange weapon at him with such speed that he barely dodged it. And the precision, it had only grazed his cheek. It was devastating to Kiba's understanding of the world. He was nearly certain of one thing. If Itachi had wanted to kill him, that weapon would have pierced his neck, and he wouldn't have been able to dodge it. It was like a rabbit staring at a tiger. It doesn't know why, but it knows the tiger can kill it easily. That's how Kiba saw Itachi in that moment, a rabbit staring at a predator. He took a step back. "Why?" Kiba asked himself. He had never felt this particular kind of fear that gripped his heart so tightly. The sudden shift in Itachi's tone, expression, and presence pierced him, filling him with unprecedented terror. "I you actually, I came on my lady's orders," Kiba stuttered. "You mean Ria's Gremory?" Itachi said and thought for a moment, then nodded. "I see. I suppose that was to be expected. Tell her I'll come speak to her about Issei on Monday, during class." Itachi nodded again, smiling toward Kiba. Kiba didn't even hesitate. It was as if he had just received the best news in the world. He nodded quickly and vanished into the bushes, not before saying, "Understood, Sir Itachi." Issei, who had watched it all, was stunned, but more than that, Itachi had just ascended to a kind of pedestal in his mind. He had seen his childhood friend accomplish something incredible. "Ninja from another world?" Issei murmured. Then, a sudden fire lit in his eyes as he smiled. "I want to be a ninja too." Itachi heard that. He quickly turned to face Issei. "You, a ninja?" Itachi smiled. "You can't even control your most basic instincts." The ninja paused before turning away. "I've already taught you the chakra theory. If you can't sense chakra, then there's no skill I can teach you." And then, Itachi disappeared, as if he had never been there to begin with. It was as if he had simply teleported, leaving Issei behind with a storm of mixed emotions. Chapter 11, Motivations. It was Sunday. Itachi walked with almost absolute tranquility through the streets of Kuoh City, calmly and serenely observing the scene before him. There was no party, nor anything like a theater or performance, just people walking back and forth. Itachi watched this, observed it, and truly felt satisfied. If only this kind of peace had been achieved in the old ninja world, Itachi murmured quietly. He breathed in the sun-warmed air and simply decided to walk, as he had done so many times in this world. Walking, for Itachi, was one of his favorite things to do on a Sunday. Just passing by, seeing the people and their expressions, filled his heart with a sense of happiness. Because Itachi could see the sad child, the cheerful old lady, the hurried young people, all of them with a story to tell, living a beautiful life. Itachi was about to continue his walk when he noticed something unusual. Near Kuoh Park, hidden among the overgrowth, lay a girl. Her body was almost collapsed against the green grass, barely concealed by the tall weeds. Itachi approached with curiosity. This was a scene he had never witnessed in Kuoh before. He took several steps forward and was finally able to observe the girl in more detail. Disheveled yet still bright blonde hair, a pretty face with a small nose, naturally red lips, and a body that was relatively average for a girl her age. Itachi noticed whip marks, bruises, and more on the girl's body. He narrowed his eyes in confusion, his mind running through several scenarios until he decided to take the girl to his house to care for her. His reason for doing this was simple. From her clothes and appearance, she seemed foreign. Not only that, he had also sensed a strange kind of energy within her body. Using his ninja abilities, Itachi quickly took the girl and returned to his home. Some time later, Asia Argento awoke, her heavy eyelids barely finding the strength to open. She felt her body, her bones, her skin, everything screamed in constant pain and exhaustion. To say she felt deep pain coming from every inch of her being would be an understatement. Nevertheless, Asia Argento gritted her teeth, endured the pain, and tried to sit up. She heard footsteps approaching. In a mentally unstable state, she began to tremble, her breathing quickened, and her mind, filled with absolute terror, sent electric signals of danger throughout her body. The soft bed and blanket she clutched did nothing to soothe her overwhelmed spirit. Many thoughts passed through her mind, blurry memories where shadowy figures tortured her, images her mind had fought to lock away and forget. She began to make desperate whimpers when a hand gently rested on her head. Then she heard the words of a young man. "Are you okay?" It didn't sound like a real question, but more like words saying, "I'm here, there's nothing to fear." Or maybe she was just exaggerating everything in her current state. Asia slowly moved her pupils, and her blurry vision gradually cleared. She saw, with total and absolute surprise, an unfamiliar but perfect face. She blinked, took a little breath, and almost as if it were her imagination, saw a strange, radiant light behind Itachi, shadowing his face and making him look like a god. Her body relaxed almost instantly. Her whimpers turned into soft, calm breaths, while her mouth slowly began to move. "Who are you?" Asia stammered, wanting to know the boy's identity. "My name is Itachi Uchiha. I found you in a simply pitiful state," he said, his face showing absolute seriousness. He hadn't seen such brutality since investigating the victims of Orichimaru in his previous world. Asia's body looked like it had passed through Orochimaru's hands and had then been discarded like trash in the park. "Itachi Uchiha," Asia smiled, her eyes filling with tears, her vision again blurring because of them. "Are you an angel sent by God?" she asked, regaining a bit of her sweet voice. Itachi frowned slightly, then shook his head. This response seemed to sadden Asia, who looked at the ceiling for a moment before smiling even more brightly. "Who did this to you?" Itachi asked, curious. There was a moment of silence in which Asia simply stared at the ceiling and blinked. Then, after a minute, she finally opened her mouth. "I was brought here by Miss Rainier. I was under the care of a church when Mr. Donaseek and Miss Calawarner started bothering me." Asia began to recount her story. To summarize, Itachi could say that she had lived a truly tragic life, deceived by a demon into healing him and eventually falling into the hands of some fallen angels who tortured her until she ended up in that state. While her story could make anyone in this world cry, for Itachi, it was simply a tragic story. The ninja world had desensitized him to these kinds of things. "Itachi, Asia murmured after finishing her story. Some tears rolled from her eyes down her cheeks, her mind filled with many thoughts but finding comfort in the boy in front of her. "Thank you," she finally said, still in pain. She smiled at the end, slightly surprising Itachi. Seeing this girl reminded the ninja a little of Naruto from his past life. He was honestly surprised that a girl could smile after all that had happened. "I'm going to need some time to recover and use my healing abilities on myself. Will it be?" Itachi nodded before she could finish her sentence. "If you need to stay here, it's fine. There won't be a problem," he said. Asia smiled at his words. "God bless you, Itachi," she murmured before breathing calmly, relaxing her entire body. However, before she could fall asleep, Itachi suddenly asked, "Why can you smile after all this?" He had once known Naruto's motivation, but frankly found it a bit stupid. So, looking at Asia Argento, Itachi felt genuine curiosity about what her motivations were. Asia opened her eyes again, a trace of emotion running through her body as she looked at Itachi. "Well, there are many reasons why I can smile after going through so many hardships." She could recall several scenarios in her life. Many moments were simply heartbreaking, but despite it all, Asia always focused on the best memories. For example, once an old lady thanked me by giving me a delicious tart. She said I'd love the flavor, even though I got sick afterwards. I guess strawberries don't agree with me. Or the time a boy lifted my skirt and slapped my thigh. He told me he was helping me kill a fly that flew by, so I thanked him profusely. Oh, or even better, the time when a senior nun asked me to cover for her for a day so she could pray for me. So I came out winning, haha. As Asia began recounting some memories, Itachi couldn't help but facepalm. He shook his head for a moment before raising a hand to stop the girl from continuing. "No need to go on, I understand it's a shame." Itachi smiled, then gently patted Asia's head with a face full of pity. "It really is a shame, but hey, having a disability isn't always a bad thing, I suppose." The ninja sighed. Asia didn't understand, though she enjoyed the pats on her head. Why did she feel like she was being treated like a girl with some kind of mental disability? A trace of strange discomfort and frustration crossed her heart as she tried to smile to chase those feelings away. Chapter 12, Friendly Chat. After a few minutes, Asia closed her eyes to begin sleeping and resting. She would recover in a few days, and if Itachi was right, what Asia possessed was a kind of healing sacred gear. The ninja left the room and headed to the kitchen to prepare something to eat. Time passed at cruising speed, and a day went by peacefully. The next day, Itachi, walking through the hallways of Kuoh Academy, calmly observed the students around him as he headed toward the occult research club located in a building not far from the academy. Along the way, he observed with mild curiosity a conversation among some nearby boys. "It's been a while since something like this happened." "No, wait, this is actually the first time something like this has happened." "Do you think that if I begged a girl for love, I could achieve the same results as the great Issei?" The words of some students nearby caught Itachi's attention. Investigating a little further, he found out the truth, and walking over to a nearby window, he saw it. Issei Hyoudou was walking hand in hand with a very pretty girl, tall, with black hair and a well-defined figure. The girl was Akino Himejima. People around Issei were staring with astonished expressions, each one more surprised than the last. However, what struck Itachi the most was the apparent happiness on Issei's face. He could swear by his Sharingan that he had never seen Issei so happy before. His expression radiated a kind of joy that the ninja had never witnessed. Itachi narrowed his eyes, ran a hand through his hair, then turned and continued walking. "It seems like you've touched heaven just by holding a girl's hand," Itachi thought to himself. "So, would you die of happiness if you had sex with one?" The ninja smiled. Yet Itachi genuinely wondered about the way Issei could feel so fulfilled. Could simply holding a girl's hand really fill his heart with so much joy? Could a girl really be that special? For Itachi, the only girl he had ever been close to was Izumi, and he hadn't even truly loved her. It was merely a slightly stronger affection than that between close friends. Then Itachi glanced at the girls around him, many of them beautiful, cute, and pure. Each one returned his gaze with a blush and a flirtatious attitude. One could say that Itachi could just utter a few words, and one of those girls would approach him to fulfill his desires. To the ninja, it seemed a bit foolish to value something as abundant as girls in such an over-the-top way like Issei did. Time continued at cruising speed, and Itachi soon reached the door of the occult research club in the abandoned building next to Kuoh Academy. Though he had sensed some gazes watching him from the shadows, he paid them no mind. He was about to lift his hand to knock when he heard, "It's open, come in," from inside. Then the door opened almost as if by magic, revealing the interior. The walls were decorated with intricate patterns, the floor clean and smooth, and some rather nice furniture scattered here and there. At the far end, seated behind a desk, was a girl with abundant red hair. Rias Gremory, the princess of the Gremory family. According to Rainier's memories, this girl could be quite temperamental when angry, but that didn't stop Itachi. He simply greeted her with a glance before walking inside. "I've heard of you. Your name is Itachi Uchiha, right?" The Gremory princess smiled after speaking. She didn't care about the lack of a formal greeting from Itachi and got straight to the point. Ria's first impression of Itachi was that he was extremely handsome, even more than Kiba. And for some reason, when she looked into his eyes, she felt like she was staring into the soul of a man with vast experience. "Actually," Itachi smiled, sighed lightly, and spoke again, "I suppose you know why I've come." Once near the desk, he pulled out the chair in front of it and sat down. Both a demon and a ninja stared into each other's eyes for a moment. It almost felt like they were communicating telepathically, as neither of them looked away. "What's your sacred gear?" Rias Gremory suddenly asked. She shifted her gaze to some papers on her desk and sighed with a hint of resignation. "You know, Issei is part of my peerage now. It doesn't matter what he was before, he's a demon now." Rias made a slightly rude gesture before smiling and looking back at Itachi. "The rules, do you understand them? You can't just walk into Gremory family territory and ask to speak with me. That's something no one would do, not even a high-ranking demon. Why would you do it?" She lightly slapped her desk, a little annoyed. In fact, her reasoning was accurate. According to the rules between demons, fallen angels, and angels, none could cross into the other's territories, and these rules extended throughout the world, even affecting humans with sacred gears. Rias Gremory thought that Itachi was genuinely a little crazy. She had ordered a background check on him but found nothing. Normal parents, a normal life, a childhood friend of Issei, and that was it. If Itachi hadn't lacked the aura of a fallen angel, demon, or angel, she would have asked her older brother to send someone to kill him. Itachi didn't respond. He simply kept staring at Rias Gremory. It wasn't that he had nothing to say. In fact, he could refute her words easily. The main reason could be that he wasn't from this world, so those rules didn't apply to him. But the real reason he remained silent was different. "You," the ninja said, pausing as he opened his eyes in surprise. "You truly have perfect symmetry." Itachi smiled. "I mean, the size of your eyebrows, eyes, lip proportions, nose, everything is millimetrically perfect." The ninja narrowed his eyes slightly, confused. It was the first time he had seen something so strange in both of his lives. However, Rias Gremory smiled. After all, she knew it. She was beautiful, very beautiful. Hey, well, you have a beautiful voice. Forget what I said earlier. Do you like what you see, Itachi?" A flirtatious voice came from her as she leaned slightly forward. "I'm just surprised, Rias," the ninja gave a half smile. "You think too highly of yourself," he said, then let out a slight chuckle. Rias Gremory narrowed her eyes, sat upright again, and stared at Itachi with dangerous eyes. "I'll get straight to the point, Itachi," she sighed. "I want you to join my peerage." There was a brief moment of silence. They looked at each other again, but before Itachi could speak, Rias jumped ahead. "Just think about it for a moment. You'd be able to stay by Issei's side always. A demon is many times stronger than a human in every way." Rias began listing the advantages of being a demon. "Also, being part of my peerage could grant you access to many beautiful and attractive women," Rias finished. She licked her lips and looked at Itachi, her expression silently shouting, "I'm your best option," as she waited, almost subconsciously, for a resounding yes. Do you really think I want many girls? Itachi asked seriously, staring into Ria's soul through her eyes, transmitting a feeling of intense sincerity. Do you really believe I need a bunch of girls when I could have you? Itachi smiled and adjusted his clothing, revealing more of his neck. Ria's heart was struck suddenly. Her eyes, previously focused on Itachi's, quickly shifted to the exposed skin. A wave of desire surged in her mind as her body suddenly released a flood of love hormones. Her expression shifted from serious to a light blush as she stared, captivated, at Itachi. I'm just kidding. My answer is no, I won't join or become your slave. Itachi smiled, adjusted his clothes again, and grinned shamelessly. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A? Itachi couldn't help but burst out laughing. He had learned this kind of move from soap operas he watched as a kid in this world, and never thought the demon girl in front of him would fall for such a simple trick. Chapter 13, Agreement. Beast, Ria's gremmery slammed her desk with force. Itachi's laughter at her sudden blush truly humiliated her. She didn't know why, but the fact that the boy in front of her wasn't taking her seriously made a rising anger flood her heart. Immediately after, several students with wings on their backs rushed to attack Itachi. They were Ria's peerage, minus Issei Hyoudou, charging at Itachi with their signature attacks. Yudo Kiba, his face full of seriousness and all his senses on high alert, swung a slender sword downward with great speed toward Itachi. Kaneko, wearing her gloves, slid across the floor, her body coiled and ready to strike with force. Meanwhile, Akino Himejima raised her hands, eyes locked on Itachi as golden lightning surged across her entire body. However, Itachi's eyes narrowed, his gaze sharpened. Too slow, he said. One of his hands moved swiftly, drawing a kunai and swinging it with great speed toward Kiba's sword. Clang! You lack strength and determination, Itachi said. The weapons clashed, creating a small shockwave, like a strong wind that swept across the entire room. Kiba felt a powerful force impact his sword, causing his hands to tremble as he grunted. Arg! Kiba let out a loud grunt, unable to keep hold of his weapon due to Itachi's sheer power. Kiba barely had time to react before a fist was already near his face. "Eh," he murmured, and then that fist struck his cheek, deforming it for an instant before his body was launched into a wall. Simultaneously, Itachi had already moved his other hand to block Kaneko's punch with his palm. HMPH, this is a little more interesting, but is brute strength enough? You're not Tsunade. You've got a lot of weak points. Thud. Another powerful gust swept the room from the impact of Itachi's palm against Kaneko's fist. The catgirl's eyes widened in shock. She never thought her punch would be completely stopped by Itachi. A sudden pain spread through her entire arm as her punch was blocked. Moments later, a light tap to the back of her neck knocked her unconscious before she could process what had happened. What the hell? Ria's gremmery barely reacted in time. She watched Itachi defeat two of her pieces in the blink of an eye. Her beautiful face was now filled with utter confusion as she saw Itachi effortlessly dodge Akino's lightning strikes. Ranged attack, but your body seems too weak. You lack physical strength? Itachi remarked. Then, he seemed to vanish from his position due to sheer speed. Ria's heart skipped a beat. She quickly turned her head and looked at Akino with worried eyes. Before she could finish her sentence, Itachi had already appeared in front of Akino, throwing a rapid punch to her stomach. Akino's face twisted in surprise and pain. She barely had time to see Itachi's perfect face before falling unconscious almost instantly. A boy with questionable sword skills, a girl with physical strength but no technique, and another with decent ranged attacks but no physical power, the ninja commented, analyzing them quickly. He shook his head, disappointed, then vanished again, only to appear in front of Ria's gremmery. Well then, the ninja asked, a slight smirk forming on his face. Your pieces are fairly effective. A mocking grin crossed his lips. If you're dealing with rats, I suppose, he said, shaking his head again. There was a brief silence. Ria's took a step back, her face a mix of shock and fear. When her eyes met Itachi's, she almost saw a sea of corpses behind him. Ria's eyes widened as Itachi took a step forward. Tell me about this world. Itachi blinked and said, then sat back down, gesturing with his hand for Ria's gremmery to sit as well. The gremmery princess clenched her teeth as she watched Itachi behave like this. She truly felt humiliated. If her older brother were here, then Itachi would probably have to kneel before her, right? But, Ria's thought, she didn't want to call her brother. That would be, according to her, cheating. So she sat back down and began answering the questions Itachi started throwing at her one by one. A few moments later, after receiving more information about this world, Itachi finally nodded. His eyes lingered on the desk for a moment before looking up again. "What are you, Itachi Uchiha?" Rias asked, her eyes scanning the ninja's body with deep seriousness. In her mind, countless theories appeared, but none seemed correct. A sacred gear wielder? No. He just defeated Akino, Kaneko, and Kiba using only physical strength, Rias thought. She tapped the table lightly with a finger, a bit annoyed. Itachi wasn't a demon, nor a fallen angel, nor an angel, so what was he? "What am I?" Itachi smiled and leaned forward slightly, looking at Rias with a half-smile before speaking. "I am." Itachi lowered his voice, as if about to reveal a secret. Ria's gremmery also leaned forward, curious. She really wanted to know. Unconsciously, she tilted her head to hear Itachi better. "I am," Itachi whispered, his smile growing even wider. "I'm human." Itachi smiled, showing his white teeth. "Ha ha 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 ha." He finally burst into loud laughter as he leaned back in his chair again. However, Princess Gremmery sighed in disappointment. She had expected Itachi to say something like that. She tilted her head, a little confused. Why did this boy act like a man and a child at the same time? Ria's gremmery bit her lower lip before resting her chin on the desk. Somehow, she felt relaxed in Itachi's presence, even after he had beaten all the members of her peerage. "Itachi," Rias waited for him to finish laughing before speaking. She looked up with tired eyes, her head swaying side to side on the desk. "If you join me, I can grant you 3 wishes." She tried again, but this time her voice was pleading. Itachi paused for a moment before raising a hand to gently pat Ria's gremmery's head like someone petting a puppy. "I mainly came here to ask you not to let Issei die during your missions." He finally stated his intentions. But the gremmery princess sighed before smiling. "Do you really think I'd let the Red Dragon Emperor, the most important piece in my peerage, die?" She blinked, as if she didn't understand Itachi's reasoning. "And besides, stop touching my hair." Rias raised her voice. One of her hands quickly moved to push Itachi's hand away, though the force she used was almost non-existent. "HMPH. It was just a reminder, Miss Gremmery," Itachi said, rising from the chair and turning around, ready to leave. "You still haven't told me what you really are," she insisted in a sweet voice, trying to appeal to the ninja's emotions. "I already told you, I'm human, that's all," Itachi said. He wasn't lying, he was just a human. He took a few steps and soon left the room. Slam! The sound of the door closing behind Itachi echoed through the room. Rias didn't lift her head from the desk. She kept staring at the door, a growing desire in her heart. She bit her lower lip before whispering, "I need to have you, no matter the price." Chapter 14, Diary. A few hours later. "Itachi, would you like to talk for a bit?" A sweet and gentle voice brought Itachi back from his thoughts to the real world. He frowned slightly and then lifted his head. In front of him stood a beautiful girl with glasses, long black hair, and a charming figure. "Tsubaki Shinra," Itachi muttered, looking at the girl before him with almost no interest as he sighed tiredly. He had been rejecting Tsubaki's invitations for a while, and today seemed no different. "Wait," sensing he was about to speak, she quickly said, "I'm not here for the usual reason." That slightly caught Itachi's attention. "Oh, really?" Itachi raised an eyebrow, smiling as if to say, "Then what is it?" He said, she sighed. She truly liked this boy, Itachi. She had been at Kuoh Academy for a while and had seen all types of people, from beautiful girls who used their looks for money to very foolish guys. But when she first saw Itachi, a strange spark spread through her heart. She stared at him open-mouthed. His body gave off an almost unmatched feminine aura, and her lower body reacted. She kept watching. Itachi wasn't just handsome, he was extremely handsome. but most importantly, he gave the impression, in Tsubaki's mind, of someone not easily attainable. He wasn't simple, she'd have to earn it. She had seen many girls confess to Itachi, only to be rejected. So she kept trying, more than 10 times. She enjoyed seeing his smile when he rejected her. And she liked imagining that maybe, one day, she could catch up to him, just enough to touch his hand. "The student council president would like to see you, Itachi," she said, blinking. She didn't know why Sona wanted to see him, but she couldn't refuse her orders. "I see," Itachi sighed, looking at Tsubaki, tilting his head and smiling. "I don't want to go, it's possible that." He frowned slightly, looked at her mischievously, and leaned forward. "Could you help me come up with an excuse?" he finally said in a deep and confident voice. There was a moment of silence. Tsubaki's face immediately turned bright red, her legs trembled, her heart filled with an overwhelming sweetness, and as she looked at Itachi, eyes almost dilated with emotion, a soft moan escaped her lips. Tsubaki panted, shifted her hips a little, then leaned toward Itachi. "I'll do everything I can to help you, Itachi," she shouted, quickly running out of the classroom. "Itachi must not be seen by the president," she shouted in her mind. "He'll surely notice my efforts and fall in love with me," she declared mentally. "Yes, showing my devotion will make me valuable in his eyes." But even as she repeated this mantra in her mind, Tsubaki noticed how many boys and girls in class looked at her in shock, then in disappointment. To the boys, seeing a goddess like Tsubaki lower herself so much before Itachi made her lose all her charm. Even with her beauty, she had lost their admiration. The girls looked at her with disappointment. However, those contemptuous looks only made her blush harder. "Is this what Issei feels like?" she asked herself as she ran down the hallway toward the student council room. I think I'm wet." Tsubaki blushed even more and sped up. After Tsubaki's outburst, Itachi simply stayed where he was, looking out the window with some curiosity, and the day ended. Back at home, the ninja was ready to cook when he noticed something strange. A dangerous feeling passed over his skin, and his black eyes quickly shifted into the 3-tomo Sharingan. He drew a kunai from his bag and, like lightning, started checking his house. He moved quickly through the rooms, hallway, kitchen, basement, and so on, but found no intruder. "What?" Itachi murmured, standing in the kitchen, staring at a half-cut fish. His eyes moved from the fish to the door. "Asia," Itachi muttered before heading quickly to the girls' room. With the door open, the ninja entered Asia's room, but as he expected, she wasn't there. A hint of concern showed on his face as he walked to the bed and found a note on the sheets. "If you want to see Asia again, then find us in the abandoned church near the city park. From, the most beautiful fallen angel." There was a moment of silence. The ninja looked at the open window. His eyes didn't return to normal, he was thinking about Asia Argento. "Although she's nice, I don't really feel any strong attachment to her." That thought crossed his mind. He, Itachi Uchiha, really had no reason to go to the abandoned church for Asia Argento. "What a shame," Itachi said, crumpling the note and tossing it in the trash. He was about to leave the room when he noticed something strange on a nearby table. It was something he'd never seen before, an open notebook. Curious, he walked over and couldn't help reading the words written on a page. Asia Argento's diary. "Well, I don't know how to begin. I hope Itachi doesn't mind that I used an empty notebook as my diary, hahaha. Well, I know he won't be mad. Itachi seems that way, indifferent. I have to say, after all this time, I think life is starting to smile at me again. Itachi is someone wonderful. I mean, maybe I'm just a silly girl, but..." Only a few days have passed, and still, our meeting was so brief that I really believe Itachi was sent by God, hehe. Well, I'm at Itachi's house. It's a lovely house. I don't know if Itachi will let me stay here once I recover. Maybe I should take a few more days to recover. Even if it means committing a sin, I feel like I should. There's not much to write today, just that I feel happy. Maybe I should cook something for when Itachi gets back from the academy. But before that, I want to write something else. I've observed the events of the world around me with kind eyes, sometimes too kind. It's not like I didn't know. I'm not stupid. How could I not know that guy who pretended to swat a fly just to touch my legs? How could I not know that old woman gave me a poisoned cake to kill me? How could I not know that demon just wanted to play with me? But God said, love thy neighbor as thyself, right? I tried. I was about to give in when I was at death's door. Those days with that stupid Donaseek and that bitch Calawarner, I really wanted to kill them. Cut off their heads but I couldn't, I'm weak. Even so, God hasn't abandoned me. Because, at the end of the day, Itachi saved me, so should I thank God. I don't think God needs a silly girl like me to pay him anything, but Itachi, for me, was sent by him so. Thank you for saving me, Itachi Uchiha. I promise I will repay you with my life. Chapter 15, Encounter. Itachi set the notebook down on the table, tilted his head slightly to look out the window again, and sighed tiredly before simply smiling. Looks like a few drops of rain will fall today. I should have an umbrella ready. He murmured before jumping out the window at full speed, so fast that the things in Asia's room flew around from the wind he generated. As he moved with high speed, Itachi narrowed his eyes. This is wrong. Getting involved like this is stupid, he told himself while leaping across various buildings. In his mind, an image of Naruto briefly flashed, smiling and being a complete idiot. Itachi sighed in resignation. Yeah, this is definitely a stupid decision only that dumb yellowhead would make, he smiled at the end of his words. Looks like I've become weak and foolish from living in this world, he murmured before picking up speed. At the abandoned church near Kuoh City's park. Trying to escape. Do you think it's that easy? Calawarner said, watching Asia Argento struggle with great effort. She didn't intervene, just watched with amusement. She had prepared many things to capture the human who saved Asia Argento. According to Cockabeel's latest reports, a special human had killed Rainier and rescued Asia. His mission was not just to confront that special human. That human will wipe the floor with you, Cockabeel had said at the time, so he sent someone else to deal with Itachi. Why do we need this weirdo to fight a simple human? Donaseek, not far from Calawarner, asked in an irritated voice. He pointed at a man in strange clothing, with long black hair and a gray cloak. Orders from Sir Cockabeel besides. Calawarner narrowed her eyes and pursed her lips. Stop moving, stupid girl. You'll never break free from those bindings with your weak body, she shouted at Asia Argento. However, Asia, completely tied to a wooden chair, kept rocking. Her idea wasn't to escape anymore. That had faded after Calawarner captured her. Her eyes turned a bright red, her gaze became determined as the image of Itachi flashed in her mind. With a push to the left, she rocked the chair just enough. She stretched her neck and glared fiercely at Calawarner. Itachi, Asia whispered softly in her mind as the chair tipped over. If one followed the angle of her fall, one could see a sharp stake on the ground that would pierce her neck from side to side once she hit the ground. Her eyes sparkled, her resolve deepened, and as she fell, she couldn't help but repeat what she had written in her diary. Thank you, Itachi. In the distance, Calawarner, confused, quickly realized what Asia was trying to do. She saw the stake, how sharp it was, and how the girl was falling toward it. Why? Calawarner asked, gritting her teeth and running forward to stop Asia's fall, but she wouldn't make it in time. Donaseek, from his position, opened his eyes in genuine shock. According to Cockabeel, Asia must not die. She was only a tool to lure Itachi out. The fallen male angel saw his life flash before his eyes when he realized Asia's intent. Damn bitch, Donaseek shouted, charging forward with all his strength, but he too wouldn't make it in time. It was as if time slowed down. Asia Argento fell slowly, and in her mind a firm belief was written in gold ink. If I die, then when Itachi comes, he won't try to fight the fallen angels and will simply escape, she thought naively, closing her eyes and saying goodbye to the world. However, before she could fall, 2 hands grabbed the backrest of the chair she was tied to. The owner of those hands calmly returned the chair to its original upright position. Jejejejed. A strange laugh echoed from the man who had saved Asia from death, just as Calawarner and Donaseek halted their charge. Itachi-kun, looks like you've got yourself a cute girlfriend, the man said, licking his lips with his snake-like tongue as a maniacal laugh escaped him. Orichimaru, Calawarner murmured, staring at the pale-skinned man, whiter than milk. Donasek stepped back a few steps, slightly fearful. Both fallen angels had seen the speed Orichimaru moved with the man Cockabeel had sent to deal with the strange human who saved Asia. That speed was several times greater than their own. "Kyukuku, you two are so careless," Orichimaru said, his snake eyes scanning the two fallen angels. "If she were my hostage, the first thing I'd do is cut off her arms and legs to prevent any trouble," Orichimaru sighed. A chill ran down Asia Argento's spine. An ancient, primal fear took over her body, and she couldn't stop breathing heavily. She knew, almost instinctively, that this man Calawerner called Orichimaru was the most dangerous person she had ever met. "What are you implying?" Calawerner asked, slightly terrified by Orochimaru's speed, but only that. "I'm not implying anything, it's just a comment, you know." Orochimaru pushed Asia's chair away from any protruding stakes, then walked forward, hands behind his back, toward Calawerner. "Back in my research days, this was quite common." Orochimaru took several steps forward. Calawerner backed away, not taking her eyes off him. "People like you die easily in the ninja world, Jejej." "The snake," Orochimaru licked his lips. "You're careless, hysterical, fragile, even a genin could kill you. Understand," he said with disdain. A flicker of rage ignited a volcano in Calawerner's heart. How dare this person look down on her? She was about to roar when another voice echoed in the room. "Orochimaru, it's been a while, I suppose." Itachi's voice resonated throughout the place, making Calawerner and Donasek turn around to see where it came from. Meanwhile, the snake smiled again and let out a chuckle. "Itachi-kun," he said in a slightly high-pitched voice. Asia Argento felt a growing anxiety. Her eyes widened, and her mind raced to find a way out. She was scared. Itachi could be in danger because of her, and even though she squirmed and groaned through the cloth gag in her mouth, she couldn't do anything else. "I thought I'd made your place clear a while ago, Orochimaru," Itachi's voice echoed. A moment later, the flash of a kunai moved like a beam of light, easily slicing through Donasek and Calawerner's heads. The two once arrogant and overconfident fallen angels fell, never even seeing Itachi's face before being defeated. "Kyukuku," cold and decisive as always, "Itachi-kun," Orochimaru said. He hadn't moved his face and body since Itachi's voice had first echoed, as if he didn't care where the ninja was hiding. "I suppose you also came to this world because you died, right?" Itachi asked, a bit curious. There was a brief silence. Orochimaru stood completely still, barely even breathing. "Actually, no, Itachi-kun. After being sealed by you in the Totsuka blade, I was revived by Sasuke-kun." Orochimaru began to recount how Sasuke had revived him to help during the Fourth Great Ninja War, and how peace was eventually achieved thanks to Naruto and Sasuke. "However, while researching the remains of an Otsutsuki, I found a flaw in space-time. I wanted to investigate it, but I ended up being transported to this world." Orochimaru finished his explanation. Chapter 16, Fight. Itachi stayed hidden behind a tree for a moment, lost in thought over Orochimaru's words. There were things he truly didn't understand, like what is an Otsutsuki. Still, he understood most of the explanation the snake gave him. Sasuke and Naruto had achieved peace in the ninja world. Itachi's heart felt a kind of release, as if a particular invisible weight had been lifted. His eyes, once bright and full of life, began to calm down. A wave of stillness washed over his body. "I see," Itachi said. A moment later, he appeared a few meters away from Orochimaru. "HMPH?" Not far away, tied to a chair, Asia Argento made many noises trying to get Itachi's attention. Her eyes, focused entirely on him, were almost completely red, her expression showing genuine concern. "Itachi-kun, you look 10 years younger." Orochimaru's gaze moved along Itachi's body, arms, legs, before finally resting on the Uchiha's red eyes. "You haven't changed either," Itachi replied with a half-smile. "Actually, you look more like a woman now," he said, mocking him slightly. There was a brief silence as the two stared at each other, curiosity etched across their faces. "Itachi-kun, I believe your little girlfriend is trying to say something." The snake changed the subject, subtly pointing at Asia Argento behind him. However, before Orochimaru could continue speaking, another Itachi emerged from the nearby trees. a kunai flying swiftly toward Orochimaru's head. Shadow clone? Orochimaru's eyes widened as the Itachi he was just talking to vanished in a puff of smoke, and the kunai from the real Itachi embedded itself in his brain. Yet this one's a clone too, ha ha ha. Itachi smiled as Orochimaru split into several snakes once his skin was pierced. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Itachi rapidly formed hand seals, launching a massive fireball toward the bushes nearby. Water style, giant water wall. Orochimaru's voice came from within the undergrowth. A towering wall of water instantly rose, blocking the fireball and producing a thick steam that spread like a plague across the area. Itachi moved ahead of time, quickly using a kunai to cut Asia's bindings, and summoned a shadow clone to take her home. Asia clutched the edge of Itachi's clothing. Though her mind couldn't process everything, her body screamed that Itachi was in danger. Her eyes, filled with genuine worry, met his for a moment. You didn't have to save me," she finally said. At that moment, Itachi let out a quiet sigh. Actually, he was about to say something but stopped himself. He raised his right hand and placed it gently on Asia's head. "Actually, I did have to save you. Now go home," he lied. The real reason he came to save her was simple. He'd softened emotionally during these last few years of peace. The me from the ninja world wouldn't have cared about things like this. "I need to train more," he scolded himself silently. With a smile, he said goodbye to Asia as the clone sped off. Asia Argento felt strange. Moments ago, she had wished for death, and now she was filled with gratitude. Whether it was despair or relief, all her emotions had a single focus: Itachi. "You'll come back alive, right?" Asia asked, lifting her head slightly to look at the clone. She didn't know he was a clone, only that the Itachi holding her wasn't the real one. "Well, a few years ago I would have said yes, but Orochimaru has lived much longer in the ninja world than I have. I don't know what powers he has now," the clone replied. In the forest, Orochimaru emerged from the ground beneath Itachi, extending a hand that morphed into multiple snakes, their fangs aiming for Itachi's face. Boom! Just as the snakes touched Itachi's skin, there was a light explosion and he vanished. "Another shadow clone," Orochimaru sighed. "You're still as skilled as in your prime, Itachi-kun." The snake stood tall on a patch of grass, his eyes scanning toward a large tree. "Sasuke married Sakura and they had a daughter. I suppose that was a happy ending, don't you think?" Orochimaru's words sent a jolt through Itachi's body. "Happy ending?" The Uchiha smiled faintly, then stepped out of hiding and faced the serpent directly. "What do you plan to do in this world?" Itachi asked, his face calm and serene. The three Tamo of the Sharingan still spun in his eyes. Orochimaru made a peace gesture with both hands before crossing his arms. "Actually, I just came to check in on an old friend, you know? It's been tough for me," Orochimaru sighed, his expression genuinely sad. "I went from being one of the legendary Sannin, a respected figure, to some kind of researcher that doesn't scare even a fly." His voice was truly depressed. His gaze shifted from Itachi to the sky, then to the trees nearby. "I couldn't act freely anymore. Naruto and Sasuke would kill me in a second if I resumed the kind of experiments I used to do," he sighed, as if waiting for some kind of reaction from Itachi. But even after a few seconds, Itachi remained calm, just staring at him. "I don't know if I can kill you, Itachi-kun. It's been a while since we fought, and I don't really want to find out, but I came here today to see you for a particular reason." Orochimaru sighed and took a few steps forward with a genuine smile. "You were a good brother, Itachi-kun," the snake finally said, letting out what seemed like genuine appreciation for the Uchiha as he closed his eyes in deep thought. "At first, I thought Naruto and Sasuke were the reason I stopped trying to manipulate the fate of the world. But after a few months in this world, I realized." Orochimaru turned his back on Itachi and stared up at the moon for a moment. "I was the one looking for something calmer. So let me tell you something, you're a Uchiha, the most talented I've ever met. I want to see how you manipulate the strings of destiny, Itachi Uchiha." Orochimaru began walking away. "In this world, there are gods who may be even stronger than the most powerful people you knew, Itachi-kun, and they likely aren't happy about your presence here." Orochimaru's voice grew fainter. pull the strings of destiny for me, so I can watch you, Itachi Uchiha," Orochimaru finally shouted. His body dissolved into several snakes that slithered off in different directions. Itachi stood still for a moment, a strange feeling of nostalgia and concern washing over him. After blinking a few times, he realized Orochimaru had really left. "Gods, huh? Looks like this world has been hiding something important from me," Itachi concluded. He scanned the area once more before sighing and vanishing into the forest at high speed. Not long after, Sona Citri's group of devils arrived through a magic circle. Sona stopped mid-sentence as she took in the scene. Her eyes quickly noticed scorched patches, cracks in the ground, fallen feathers of fallen angels, and a lingering heat in the air caused by steam. What the hell happened here? Sona lost her composure for a moment, her voice full of surprise, before she quickly began inspecting the area. Chapter 17, Return and Talk with the Demons. When Itachi's clone vanished after dropping her off in her room, Asia Argento once again felt the chill of the night lightly pierce her skin, digging through it and going deep, leaving behind a painful wound. Asia clenched her cold hands tightly, so much so that her nails dug into her palms and drew a bit of blood. She looked at her bed with worried eyes, then her gaze wandered around the room until it landed on the small table where she found her diary open. Asia took a couple of steps forward, noticed the diary open, and finally saw some words written on its pages. Her eyes, still shining and moist from her sudden sadness, couldn't help but notice a few traces of moisture on one of the pages. "It hasn't rained lately," she murmured. She picked up the small diary and hugged it tightly against her chest. Despite the growing worry in her heart for Itachi, a faint feeling of hope and affection spread through her mind. She remained there, hugging the diary, closing her eyes and simply letting time pass. It wasn't until some time later that she finally opened her eyes, moving her head quickly in confusion. Her eyes opened wide, and she seemed to awaken from a kind of trance. Her ears, desperately hoping for a sign of hope, quickly caught the sound coming from the kitchen not far away. A delicious smell reached her nostrils, and for some reason, her heart relaxed almost instantly. "Itachi," Asia murmured. Her body moved almost on instinct. She ran at full speed from her room, down the stairs, and when she reached the kitchen, she saw eager and frantic Uchiha wearing an apron, chopping some vegetables. Nearby, a fish was frying, and a pot was releasing a delightful aroma. Her eyes were struck with a sudden wave of sweetness, her expression softened, her body grew weaker, and almost as if she were seeing the mother she never knew, she jumped forward. "Itachi!" As she launched herself to hug the ninja, Asia finally understood something. In her mind and heart, some words burned themselves into her soul. Sometimes it doesn't take much time to form a bond strong enough to break beliefs. All it takes is a gentle gesture, a sign of affection, or a happy moment to engrave that person's existence into our soul with blood, and ultimately trap us in the nostalgia of what once was reality. Asia Argento shed a few tears. Itachi quickly turned around to catch her in his arms and gently stroked her head. "I missed you, Itachi." There was a brief moment where Asia, still sobbing, simply stayed there hugging Itachi. Her soul, overwhelmed by an intense wave of emotions boiling over her, slowly began to cool down, no longer tormenting her with particular pain, but instead turning into a warm feeling that wrapped around every part of her being. She opened her eyes. She wished that moment could be immortalized and that the world would stop right there, just to witness the magnificence of her devotion to Itachi, and in the end, let that feeling become eternal. However, the magic of beautiful moments is that they are fleeting, right? If they weren't, they wouldn't be beautiful moments, just moments. Itachi comforted the girl for a while, waiting for her to calm down. The next day, at the table during breakfast, Asia lifted her head slightly but couldn't find the words to continue. She looked at the calm ninja, slowly eating from his plate, and felt extremely shy. The ninja looked up and gave Asia a warm glance. That gaze made her blush even more and lower her head slightly. I want to know, who or what are you?" That question had been circling Asia's mind ever since Itachi appeared in the forest the day before. She knew about demons, fallen angels, and angels, but she didn't know exactly what Itachi was. A small silence fell. The ninja swallowed his food before speaking. I'm a ninja from Konoha. It's complicated, you know, Itachi smiled. As a ninja, I use chakra, perform jutsu, and stuff like that. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and returned with 2 glasses of juice. But I think that with you around, I forget all my jutsu, and how to protect my heart too, ha ha ha. Itachi laughed heartily as he brought the juice for Asia. He placed the glass of juice near Asia's plate while watching her hide her face in her hands, completely blushing. In fact, this kind of joke he had learned from soap operas he watched as a kid. However, after setting down the glass, his expression turned serious in an instant. Am I really getting weaker? He thought, looking at his hand and simply deciding to sigh. Hours flew by. Itachi left a shadow clone behind to take care of Asia and vanish if something bad happened, then went to Kuoh Academy. While walking on the small path near the academy walls, Itachi noticed from a distance that Issei was walking hand in hand with Ria's gremmery. There he is again, showing off. I think she's only with him out of pity. Maybe Issei's just lucky with girls. The boys around, just like before, began murmuring things about Issei and how lucky he was. The envy was almost palpable in the air. Many of these students had nothing on their minds but girls and status within the academy. As Itachi walked calmly, he eventually came face to face with Issei and Rias at the main entrance. The poor boy froze. His face, which had been full of satisfaction, quickly shifted to one of surprise. Itachi, it's been a while. Issei smiled, scratching his cheek while looking at the ninja. His expression, however, unlike before, was now arrogant, and even his tone carried some arrogance. Issei tightened his grip slightly on Ria's gremmery's hand, moving his eyes to indicate her as if to show off to Itachi. See, she'll be my girlfriend. However, to the ninja, this was just the act of a child who had found a new toy. Itachi, it's good that you're here. I thought you might not be available, you know? There was some sort of chaos in the forest near an abandoned church. Rias narrowed her eyes. Only a fool would miss the implications behind her words. In fact, Itachi smiled, ignoring Issei and calmly replying, I'd like to discuss that first with the student council president, he suggested, earning a scowl from the demon. Ria's gremmery's calm, cheerful face turned to one of anger as she looked at Itachi with the desire to punch him. What? She said, confused, but only uttered a single word. You heard me. Honestly, Itachi sighed and looked at Issei before smiling. I really thought I had raised my childhood friend well, but it seems I failed, and the people around him aren't helping either, he said what he thought, looking at Rias and Issei with disapproval. Ria's gremmery took a step forward, visibly annoyed. However, Issei took 2 steps ahead, placing himself in front of Rias. Bro, Issei sighed, then smiled with some resignation. You know, I've been thinking, and I'm the Red Dragon Emperor. Someone who's going to be really powerful, you get it? Issei nodded repeatedly, as if trying to convince himself. However, in Issei's mind, he heard an audible, mocking laugh. It made him clench his teeth in sudden irritation. Why can't you understand? You and D-Drag, I just want to. Rias turned around, glaring at Issei with glowing red eyes for a moment, signaling him to stop. Then she turned back to look at Itachi. Thanks for the advice, Itachi. I'll keep it in mind, she said, though she had no intention of taking him seriously. This guy had triggered several different emotions in her heart, from desire at first to the current anger. Conflicting desires battled in her mind for control. Still, Issei, who had always been an obedient young man, influenced by his sudden power, had been brooding over Itachi and his words almost obsessively lately. I've seen people doom the world for a woman. I hope you're not one of them, bro, Itachi said, looking at Issei and noticing how the poor boy's face resembled Abido's a little. Then Itachi simply continued walking toward the academy, ignoring the stares of several students and just walking. Chapter 18, Cooperation with a Particular Demon. Knock knock. Itachi knocked on the student council room door and stood for a moment observing the wood until he heard it open. The girl who opened it was someone he recognized, Tsubaki Shinra. Tsubaki's eyes filled with a particular kind of surprise. She dropped the notebook in her hands as her legs weakened. Itachi, she murmured almost like a powerful moan, staring at the boy for a moment before smiling and blushing. You came, hee. Tsubaki let out a flirty little laugh, full of hope, a touch of excitement, and a very particular sense of relief. Itachi calmly nodded before taking a few steps forward. Tsubaki quickly moved aside and invited him in. The room was similar to Ria's grimoires, except instead of a well-endowed redhead, there was a black-haired girl with a bob cut and a slightly less eye-catching figure than Ria's grimoire. You must be Itachi, right? Said the girl with the bob haircut as she looked up, set her pen down, and smiled slightly. I'm Sona Citri. The ninja calmly observed her for a moment, then his gaze subtly shifted to scan the entire room. Finally, he located several demons hidden strategically, one between the walls, another under the desk, another in the corner. All of them watched him curiously. What a way to welcome me, but you've still got a long way to go if you really want to hide from my sight. Itachi smiled, took a few steps forward, and sighed. Is this your first time spying on a ninja, or do you already have a monthly subscription? Ha ha ha. Itachi chuckled lightly to ease the tension in the room, but Sona Citri remained calm, staring at him, and none of the hidden demons came out of their spots. HMPH? Itachi let out a slight sigh before sitting in the chair across from Sona Citri's desk. So, Miss Sona Citri, do you know why I came here today? He asked calmly. I suppose it's not just to spend time with me, is it? Sona gave a mock-sad face as she rested her chin on her arm and her arm on the desk, looking at Itachi with a warm smile and half-lidded eyes. In fact, if you want, we can spend some quality time together. Itachi mirrored her posture, imitating her almost like a reflection. Well, who would have thought Itachi, the guy who doesn't get ruffled by girls, would be here offering his company so easily? Don't you think you should turn up the difficulty a bit? Sona flashed a bright smile, showing her white teeth. Actually, I could raise the difficulty. I would. But the author said this chapter doesn't have the budget yet for special effects. Itachi smiled too, showing his white teeth. There was a brief moment of silence. What? Sona didn't understand, frowned, then sat up straight again and just stared at Itachi. Itachi sighed with obvious disappointment at how abruptly the brief exchange of jokes had ended. Well, to begin with, I want to say. Itachi began telling the story of how he was a ninja in another world and ended up here, his reincarnation, and his encounter with Orichimaru, a mad scientist from his previous world. He obviously left out the part about meeting Asia Argento. Itachi had several reasons for telling Sona Citri all this. First, he had found out who Sona was thanks to his earlier conversation with Ria's grimoire, and knew she also had a relative who was a demon king in the underworld. This girl seems more mature and easier to work with, Itachi thought as he observed Sona Citri. The demon girl's face cycled through various expressions as she listened to Itachi, from disbelief to amusement, and finally a look that screamed, "Are you kidding me?" written all over it. Tsubaki Shinra, not far away, was thinking the same thing as Sona. But since Sona had already talked to Rias about Itachi and how weird he was, she still listened until the end. Wow, Sona said at the end, her eyes wide. When's the movie coming out? Sounds interesting, ha. Sona cracked a joke that got no reaction from Itachi. Sona swallowed hard, glanced to the sides as if thinking, and finally opened her mouth again. Hey, Itachi, if what you're saying is true then, are you worried Orichimaru will start his experiments again in this world? She asked, realizing it wasn't time for jokes after her failed attempt to make Itachi smile. The Orichimaru, I remember, is someone who would do anything to gain power, and I'm sure he'd find a way to surpass himself many times over in this world, Itachi said, narrowing his eyes. He hadn't dared to attack Orichimaru last night mainly because he didn't know what new tricks the snake had learned. He had also heard from Ria's grimoire that the gods, demon lords, and others in this world were incredibly powerful. And Itachi wanted to see if he could influence Sona Citri to mobilize some demons to deal with Orichimaru. As for revealing his identity as a ninja, Itachi no longer cared if that happened since Ria's grimoire already knew. I see, Sona Citri said while looking into Itachi's eyes. Rias says you're very powerful, but that's not enough, you know. Us supernaturals have rules, she said, licking her lips for some reason. As if she had already planned for Itachi's visit, she slid a queen piece toward him, watching as his expression turned serious and slightly annoyed. She opened her mouth before he could say anything. "Itachi, this isn't an invitation from me. I already have my queen Tsubaki Shinra," Sona said, earning a raised eyebrow from Itachi. Then, she simply smiled and looked at him with gleaming eyes. Sona licked her lips, looking at Itachi with desire. Her body filled with a kind of excitement as her red lips parted. "This is a queen piece from my sister, Seraphal Leviathan." A moment of silence followed. Everyone in the room was stunned. Tsubaki Shinra quickly turned to look at her queen, Sona. Her pupils dilated as she dropped her notebook again. The air seemed to freeze and time itself stopped. These two beings, a human and a demon, looked into each other's eyes, each fully aware of what the queen piece on the desk implied. "Demon King Seraphal Leviathan," Itachi repeated quietly. He had heard a few things from Ria's grimoire about this demon king. She only mentioned her strength and ice magic abilities, and also said she was very powerful. Itachi didn't know what a queen piece from one of the 4 demon kings of the underworld was doing here, and apparently looking for him. Then, Itachi looked at Sona Citri with an even more intense frown. Is the younger sister of Seraphal Leviathan really this influential? He thought, then slid his hand over to lightly touch the queen piece. It was a black chess piece, a queen carefully carved from an unknown material, and its texture was simply smooth. "I spoke with my sister after hearing Ria's grimoire's report about you, and it seems she's a bit too excited to meet you, hee, Sona Citri said, looking at Itachi. Although she maintained a serious, stern face, she still remembered the silly smile her sister had when she mentioned something about a ninja from another world. Too childish, was what she had thought at the time, while in her memory there was an image of her sister doing some hand signs. However, seeing Itachi simply touch the queen piece in his hand with slight disinterest on his face, she couldn't help but sigh lightly. "Not even the chance to be part of a demon king's peerage can tempt you. You're truly something, Itachi," Sona murmured quietly. Chapter 19, Decision. A slight smile formed on Itachi's face. "Haha, inviting me to join Seraphal, HMPH, well, do you know what I'm thinking?" Itachi gave a half smile, looking at Sona with bright eyes. Sona raised an eyebrow, tapped the table with a finger as she coldly observed Itachi, making a face while tilting her head as if to say, "Go ahead, speak." "No," Itachi pushed the piece back to Sona Citri. There was a trace of mild irritation in his heart. "I've been a subordinate many times before, Miss Sona. I think now I want to be something more." Itachi spoke with just indignation and a particular desire. Sona squinted, frowned, raised her hand, and struck the chess piece with some force, sending it flying directly into Tsubaki's outstretched hands. "Do you really think you're that important? Seriously? Come on," she said mockingly, as if talking to a child. "You're just a ninja, Itachi. You pissed off Ria's grimoire. Well, she's a kid, she won't do anything. She always wants to prove she can handle things herself." Sona stood up from her chair with almost too much speed and stared at Itachi. Moments later, 2 magnificent demon wings spread behind her, creating a cutting wind that shook the room's contents. "I am Sona Citri, not Ria's grimoire," she said, seeming ready to attack when Itachi also stood. He pointed at Sona's face with particular confidence, his expression as calm as before. "Miss Citri, if you're going to act like you're going to attack me, at least have the decency to actually get angry," Itachi said, sighing before lowering his hand. His words quickly caused a surprised expression on the demon's face. Then Itachi simply sat back down and looked Sona Citri directly in the eyes. She felt a strong sense of excellence emanating from the ninja. Her previously calm body and her plan to make Itachi fight had been revealed so easily. And above all, Itachi's calm attitude toward the queen piece from her sister caused a mental shock. Sona didn't finish her sentence, not because she was interrupted, but because she couldn't find words to refute Itachi's statements. Then she looked at him with new eyes, more respectful than when he first entered the room. "Was it that obvious?" Sona asked, curious. Itachi smiled and tilted his head, making an obvious gesture. Well," Itachi said. She found no way to contradict Itachi. Her plans to have Itachi fight her peerage to test his strength had failed. However, moments later, Sona Citri couldn't help but burst out laughing. Haha, hey, do you know what? Sona quickly hid her wings and sat back down. You should have seen Ria's Gremory's face when she told me about you. She was so? She began laughing lightly, her attitude changing so quickly it would have surprised anyone, except Itachi. She was so red with embarrassment and anger I almost thought someone had painted her face red or something. Sona quickly signaled to her queen, Tsubaki. Come on, Tsuba, bring Itachi something to drink. He's a good man, Sona nodded several times. After all, no other man had given Sona such a beautiful gift. The gift? The chance to see her good friend Ria's blushing, angry, and with a greed never seen before in her. Were you pretending the whole time? Itachi asked in his mind, his words and expression as if he didn't care, but in reality, he was surprised. He had only realized she was acting when she began showing her demon wings. There was no killer instinct in your movements, they were quite mechanical, actually, he thought at that moment. Sona took a breath and finally sighed, smiling as she looked at Itachi with some appreciation. Aha, anyone who can make Rias that mad is a good friend of mine, Sona said with a real and absolute sense of truth in her words and actions. Itachi could swear those last words were all genuine. By the way, that Orichimaru you mentioned, how powerful was he in your previous world? Sona asked, her expression and tone showing genuine curiosity. Itachi thought for a moment, looked at Sona's beautiful face before speaking. Well, he was one of the legendary 3 Sannin. Itachi began narrating stories about Orochimaru's feats, achieving immortality, killing the Hokage, researching, and how difficult he was to kill. Sona's eyes remained wide open throughout the explanation. She looked at Itachi with bright eyes, taking notes on a sheet of paper as she listened. Finally, she said, I see, then tapped the table a couple of times with her pen. She paused, what you tell me is, hard to believe but not impossible. Ajuka was joking about the existence of multiverses or something like that a few years ago. Sona Citri stood up and quickly went to look for a book among the shelves along the wall. Where is it? She murmured while passing by several books. Bingo, she finally said, pulling a book from the shelf and quickly placing it on the desk. Theory of Travel Between Worlds Connected by Wormholes. It's one of Ajuka's latest books, Sona hummed, sat back down, and flipped rapidly through pages until she reached a specific one. I think it's here. It says, the universe's worldview is broad, but it is not as real as it seems. The laws of quantum physics are an abstraction of physics in our universe, and the randomness of quantum mechanics makes us think that. Sona began reading a long paragraph explaining Ajuka's brief theory about how it's possible that parallel worlds exist connected through wormholes. After a moment, Tsubaki brought a kind of tart on a beautiful plate and placed it on the desk in front of Itachi. A simple thank you from Itachi was enough to make the girl extremely nervous. She shook her head and said it was her job. Haha, Itachi laughed at Tsubaki's reaction. He said, you act a bit like Asia Argento, you two should meet. However, when Itachi said this, Tsubaki narrowed her eyes and looked at Itachi with eyes the ninja had never seen before. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. The universe could be, hey guys. Sona noticed the tension between Itachi and Tsubaki and raised her voice a bit annoyed. We're talking about something serious. Please, if you want a flirt, do it somewhere else. She squinted, scolding them like 2 children. It's not that, President. Tsubaki blushed again and quickly stepped back, hiding in a corner, murmuring something very quietly. Chapter 20, Sona Citri's Proposal. Sona raised an eyebrow at her petite queen. She stomped her foot lightly with some force before looking at Itachi. She was genuinely surprised. Although you're way too handsome, isn't this girl's reaction a bit exaggerated? She wondered, but then shook her head. I think you've paid enough attention to what I said. Sona closed the book before licking her lips. It's most likely that you crossed a wormhole and arrived on this planet. As for Orichimaru, I believe I understand how dangerous he is. Let's do something. Sona smiled, cleared her throat, and continued. We can stop Orichimaru. In fact, it's our responsibility, so we will stop him if anything bad happens anyway. But everything you describe about your world is. Sona's eyes opened wide, a powerful feeling rising within her heart, unique. If you could teach someone else to control that chakra, then we could give you a special position among the devils, of course. There's no need for you to become one, haha, she finally said. Itachi smiled in return. If regular beings could control chakra, then yes. Itachi sighed, glanced around, and then looked over at Tsubaki in a corner. The girl stared back with eyes sparkling like a scolded puppy. But even though I've tried, I don't think it's possible. There was a brief silence after Itachi's words. Sona finally grimaced before nodding her head. All right, Itachi, but if something bad happens at the academy, you'll have to help. That's my price for warning my superiors about Orichimaru. Sona said, tapping the book lightly before smiling. Also, if you don't mind, how about not rejecting Tsubaki anymore? She grinned widely, showing her white teeth. President. Sona started arguing with Tsubaki, and Itachi left the room a few moments later. That went better than I thought, Itachi murmured. At first, he thought he'd have to show something like a fireball jutsu or sign some kind of contract. However, Sona Citri had simply asked him to help in case of trouble. Maybe it's not that simple, Itachi said before returning to his classroom. A few hours later, Issei Hyoudou was trembling. The temperature outside Kuoh Academy in the late afternoon had suddenly dropped. He had no coat, and no one seemed to care. Issei stood with the other members of Rias Gremory's peerage. They were investigating a rogue devil sighted near a warehouse. As they walked, a strange electric sensation ran through his body. Let's go, we can't waste more time. Akino raised her voice, releasing a small lightning spell that ran through Issei's entire body. Gog, Issei groaned in pain, slightly kneeling. Although his body hurt, his mind was strangely overwhelmed with many thoughts. Why has Akino's attitude toward me changed from when we were in school? Issei wondered, genuinely curious, raising his head slightly to look with teary eyes at the tall, black-haired girl. But she merely sighed with some disappointment. Are you really the Red Dragon Emperor? She wondered to herself, though she still faked a smile. Issei, if you pass tonight's trial, I'll give you a reward. Those words motivated Issei. He set aside the questions about Akino's behavior and stood up quickly, put on a serious face, and started walking with determination. Puppet, huh? Akino muttered, her mind filled with self-satisfaction as she watched Issei obey her orders. Kiba observed the scene with furrowed brows, while Kaneko simply watched with no expression. As they continued toward the warehouse, due to a new protocol from Ria's Gremory, Kiba approached and lifted a hand to pat Issei's shoulder. The poor boy opened his eyes for a moment. The soft touch of a hand made him feel way too good, and he slightly turned his head. In his mind, he thought maybe it was little Kaneko coming to encourage him. Instead, he saw a disgustingly handsome face. "Kei Kiba, it's you," Issei muttered, squinting his eyes, visibly dissatisfied. "Yes, it's me, Issei," Kiba replied. He noticed Issei's subtle aversion and just shrugged. He was about to continue when Issei took several steps away from him. The poor boy's face showed a mix of disgust, resentment, and some repressed anger. Kiba noticed that look and truly didn't understand why. Why was Issei, who had barely spoken to him, acting like this? "Issei, are you okay?" Kiba asked, genuine curiosity growing in his heart. The poor boy nodded several times while grimacing. "Yes, I'm fine, Kiba." Kiba felt that Issei was being a bit too childish. Why get mad at him so suddenly? Why avoid him? In fact, Kiba somewhat understood. Many boys hated him simply for being popular with girls at school. But none of them had ever shown such real rejection and resentment as Issei had just now. "I see," Kiba nodded. "Issei." He paused, watching the poor boy, smiled, and let out a sigh almost of pity. Yet he couldn't find the words to continue. He wanted to ask aloud, "Is a girl you don't even know really that important to you?" He knew Issei envied him for being born good-looking, but he had seen much uglier guys than Issei land beautiful girlfriends. So, why should he be blamed and carry Issei's hate? "Take this," Kiba said, thinking for a moment. He couldn't find any way to express his thoughts or feelings, so he took off the coat Ria's Gremory had gifted him a few days ago and tossed it toward Issei. For his part, the poor boy caught the coat. It felt like clouds to the touch, and stared at it for a moment. He disliked the smell, the person it came from, even the way it looked, but he faked a smile. "Thanks," Issei said. He voiced a thank you, so fake that even a baby would know he was lying. Then he put on the coat to shield himself from the cold. The group soon reached the warehouse. Akino, who was in charge, quickly began whispering orders. "Kiba, strike first and then pull back. Kaneko, in front of me, I'll provide support from a distance. And Issei, I want you to observe. If anything goes wrong, use the boosted gear." "Yes, Commander," everyone replied at once except Issei. With Kiba scouting the area and moving ahead, the group quickly entered through a small opening in the warehouse. They passed through a narrow hallway until they reached a large empty room. There were some things stacked against the walls. Human heads were scattered on the sticky floor. Moonlight barely entered through some windows, while strange noises came from a corner of the warehouse. "Hey, new friends, ha 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 ha, let's have some fun." As soon as Kiba spotted the whole scene, a high-pitched male voice echoed from the noisy corner. A strange coldness spread throughout the room. Kiba felt his blood freeze slightly as a tingle ran through his body, warning him of incoming danger. Kaneko and Akino felt the same and quickly took combat positions. While Issei opened his eyes in surprise, his body froze, his mind trembled, his breathing nearly stopped, completely overwhelmed by absolute terror. "To battle!" the demon in the corner shouted, charging forward with ferocity, revealing his body. A strange, deformed head with no visible trace of a face, a bulky torso stuffed as if with rags, and 2 large legs, all covered in green skin. Kiba's eyes widened in surprise. He clenched his teeth and summoned 2 swords, one for each hand. "It's fast!" Kiba yelled. Kaneko and Akino dodged, moving to either side as Kiba rushed forward. Chapter 21, Fight with the Strange Demon. "Yeah!" The strange demon swung one of his deformed arms forward, spreading a large amount of cold air throughout the room. Kiba sensed the danger. His eyes widened. His mind sent danger signals throughout his body, and he quickly bent down, passing under the demon's legs. Kiba swung his sword upward, aiming at the enemy's crotch. However, his sword made contact with the strange demon's skin. Clash! Crack! His sword shattered into multiple pieces with a crackling sound. Kiba's hands trembled as his eyes widened even more. "Yeah!" The strange demon laughed while turning halfway around. By this time, Kiba had already moved several meters away from his enemy. "Take this, bastard!" the strange demon shouted as he moved his body at high speed in a powerful spin. His left arm detached like a bullet heading straight for Kiba. "Shit!" the handsome boy yelled as he felt his legs shake. His speed wouldn't be enough to dodge the attack. However, just before the demon's arm hit his face. Bang! Kaneko, who was not far away, hurriedly jumped with force, causing small cracks in the ground, and swung her fist forward. The strange demon's detached arm hit her fist with great force, creating a small shockwave like a powerful cold wind that swept across the room. "Akino, now!" Kaneko shouted. Her fist was strong enough to repel the strange demon's detached arm, which, as if wrapped in magic, quickly began to retreat through the air, returning to its owner. "Ha ha ha, do you think you are strong? Watch out for my combo." Akino mocked while moving her hands repeatedly as if punching something in front of her. From her hands, several lightning balls that released powerful sounds rushed at high speed toward the demon, who was still waiting for his returning arm. "Mom!" The strange demon let out a slight cry. The lightning balls quickly struck him, producing sounds like small thunderclaps hitting the ground and small explosions that raised some smoke. Watching this, Issei finally began to breathe. His body, deprived of oxygen due to his agitated state, almost collapsed completely. He opened his mouth and took a deep breath while kneeling quickly and vomiting the afternoon's lunch. "Shit!" Issei shouted with rage, terror, and above all, helplessness in his mind, supporting his hands on the ground as his body trembled uncontrollably, his wide eyes almost popping out of their sockets. "Ha ha ha, what's wrong now, smart guy? Didn't you say you were enough? Didn't you say I just had to obey your orders? Why are you trembling now that you're only facing a pathetic demon?" D-Drake's mocking voice sounded in Issei's mind with bitterness and resentment. Issei's actions, being so easily manipulated by women, his lack of skill controlling chakra, and his recent arrogance had made D-Drag truly annoyed with the poor boy. "Shut up," Issei yelled inside his mind. However, his body, still unused to battle, the smell, the cold, and above all, the fear of seeing something like the strange demon, continued to tremble. After a moment, the dust finally cleared, revealing the strange demon still standing with what seemed like a smile on his non-existent face. "Yeah, what a good massage." The strange demon let out a strange guttural laugh as he moved his body to accentuate his amusement. "Now taste my blade," he shouted, flexed his knees, and jumped powerfully toward Akino, leaving cracks on the ground beneath him. The cold wind generated by the sudden movement of the strange demon sent Issei flying along with several objects inside the room. Kiba, Kaneko, and Akino watched with wide eyes as the demon came out unscathed and then attacked. "Shit, Kaneko," Kiba shouted with some fear in his voice. He quickly summoned several swords consecutively, grabbed their handles, and threw them like spears at high speed toward the strange demon. "I can't stop him. My swords shatter when they touch his skin," Kiba thought fearfully as he threw the swords as fast as he could. However, upon impact against the demon's body, they shattered into thousands of pieces. Kaneko knew that Akino behind her wouldn't be able to dodge the strange demon's attack quickly enough. She bent down, put all her strength into her legs, and, like the strange demon, made a great leap forward. The catgirl's movement generated more cold wind in the room, although not as much as the demon's sudden move. She extended her fist forward with force. The strange demon did the same, and in an instant, both fists collided, creating a powerful shockwave. Smash! Both fists struck hard. A powerful sound like thunder spread throughout the room, while a strong wind swept the place. Even heavy equipment and human bodies here and there were sent flying. "Ag!" Kaneko let out a cry of pain as her fist was quickly overpowered by the strange demon's strength. Her forward arm rapidly lost power, and her body was hit by the demon's blow, sending her flying into the wall. However, this brief moment was enough for Akino to create a small communication circle with Ria's gremmery. "President, the enemy is too powerful. Issei is useless," Akino shouted with some desperation in front of the small communication circle while running and continuously throwing lightning balls at the strange demon. However, the strange demon laughed again. "Yeah." He opened his jaws like a box, swallowed the lightning balls Akino threw, closed his jaws, and a second later reopened them. "What the hell?" Akino opened her mouth in surprise at the sight. Then her eyes looked at her with terror, as from the beast's jaws a powerful thunderbolt was shot at her at high speed. Shit! Not far from them, Kiba had anticipated something going wrong and quickly launched 10 swords in succession between the strange demon and Akino. His prediction was correct. When the thunderbolt shot from the beast's jaws, it quickly hit Kiba's 10 swords, generating a loud noise, a small explosion, and a shockwave. "Very clever, pretty boy." The strange demon let out a strange voice while quickly turning around and focusing his gaze on Kiba. His feet began to move again, heading toward Kiba at high speed, ready to kill him. However, "Tusk, trash. Do you think you can beat me in speed?" Kiba felt a little confident despite the slight fear in his heart, and quickly started moving in the opposite direction of Akino and Kaneko to distract the strange demon. "Yeah, besides being pretty, you're also dumb." The strange demon roared mockingly while moving his body with force. His arm detached again and charged like a bullet in the direction Kiba fled. Kiba's eyes widened. That stupid attack again, it's impossible to dodge. Kiba saw the demon's arm charging at high speed toward him. His body sensed mortal danger and almost instinctively raised his arms to cover his face. Chapter 22, The Price to Pay. The closer the strange demon's arm got, Kiba felt an even greater fear. However, before he could feel the strange demon's arm hit him, a strange red energy ball had already struck that arm, evaporating it almost instantly. "I've arrived. What's the situation?" Ria's gremmery appeared not far away, coldly scanning her surroundings while quickly directing her gaze at Akino. "President, we have found a strange demon that is too difficult to defeat." Akino began to explain the situation while the strange demon nearby remained still, watching Ria's gremmery with curiosity. The eyes of this strange demon shifted from mockery to slight caution. He knew who Ria's gremmery was, as well as that destructive magic, so he was considering several scenarios. Issei murmured not far away, his body almost completely buried under a pile of rubble covering him. He painfully observed the torn piece of plastic near his face that obstructed his view of the entire room, and he simply remained there, blank. Have you understood now, Issei Hyoudou? You are weak. What have you done these days as a demon? Have you even trained for a single hour? Dreg murmured inside Issei's mind. The poor boy's emotions had shifted from arrogance after becoming a demon to absolute fear of death just moments ago, and finally, now, after being hit by several pieces of rubble, he was in a trance. His bones were broken, blood flowed from his mouth and open wounds, all while he blinked and observed almost with a killer calmness. Impossible, Issei murmured softly. Even in his current state, hearing Dreg's voice wasn't enough to change his mind. Dreg's thoughts seemed absurd to him, as did Itachi's. Only his own thoughts, according to him, made sense. A pretty girl is not the same as an ugly girl. It's stupid even to think that. A life spent struggling, without enjoying the company of women, is no life at all. These thoughts spread like pillars within his mind, supporting his soul. He gritted his teeth, his eyes shining with a very particular green hue. His body, with some broken bones, was forced to move. It's not enough, you know it, right? It's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. The strange demon began murmuring quietly as another arm grew from his missing stump. What are you saying? Haha, a deserter talking nonsense. Ria's gremmery shook her head, moved her body, and her arms moved with agility as two red energy balls concentrated in her palms. However, unlike before, this time the strange demon did something different. His body began to change, becoming thinner and more human very quickly. President, there's no time to lose. Akino shouted. She and the others in the room felt a strange sense of danger and quickly went into battle stance. We must not let him transform. Kiba again condensed several swords and began launching them at high speed toward the strange demon. However, as before, his swords seemed like drops of water hitting molten iron. Meanwhile, Akino mobilized her magic too, launching continuous lightning attacks that struck the strange demon's body. Kaneko quickly positioned herself in front of Ria's gremmery as a human shield. Still, yeah, the strange demon let out a very particular sharp laugh. Those attacks barely caused any tickles on his body. HMPH. Ria's gremmery made a sound difficult to understand with her mouth before launching several spheres of destruction toward the strange demon. This time, the strange demon did dodge, moving at great speed through the room, generating powerful wind waves that chilled the place below freezing point. He dodged Ria's attacks at great speed. Princess, you're finished! The strange demon roared. His body took the shape of a bodybuilder, charging forward in a zigzag pattern, continuously dodging Ria's gremmery's attacks and tanking those from Kiba and Akino without problems. A cold chill ran through Ria's gremmery's heart as she saw the strange demon dodge at high speed. A small fear spread in her heart like a bomb and quickly settled to her bones. Kaneko gritted her teeth. A trail of blood was already dripping from the corner of her lips. She knew the strange demon surpassed her in strength, but she simply could not leave her boss unprotected, so she gritted her teeth and charged forward as well. It won't be enough, Kiba murmured. He stopped throwing swords like a madman and rushed forward. He could still say his speed was faster than the strange demon's and could reach him before he got to Ria's. However, the strange demon smiled, watching with amusement as Kaneko and Kiba hurried to stop his advance and protect Ria's. Taste my flavor? The strange demon stopped abruptly, sending powerful gusts of cold air through the room, opened his mouth, and quickly released a green smoke that spread rapidly. What? Ria's gremmery squinted in confusion. The strange demon had faked an attack to get close and launch a strange ability. Dodge now, she shouted, moving as far away as possible from the green smoke. Kaneko quickly retreated and escaped the green smoke. Akino did the same. However, Kiba had already rushed and couldn't easily change his trajectory. He closed his eyes and held his breath while fighting to stop his advance. You will die, the strange demon murmured quietly. He raised his hand, closed his jaws, and moved at great speed toward Kiba. The handsome boy only watched with surprised eyes as the strange demon swung a pund toward his face. Kiba let out a sound of surprise, barely blinking, his eyes dilated and his body trembled. The palm came close at an almost impossible speed to dodge due to his prior approach and surprise. I'm dead, ha, Kiba thought. His eyes moved faster than the demon's to see Ria's Gremory looking at him with a desperate face not far away, and he could only murmur a thank you before the punch hit his head. Impact! The strange demon's punch struck Kiba's head, exploding it like a watermelon falling from a building. Kiba's body was sent flying by inertia as the strange demon let out an audible laugh. Yeah, strike one. The strange demon's sharp and mocking voice echoed through the entire room. A feeling of dread, a mixture of fear, sadness, and rage, spread through the hearts of Akino, Kaneko, and Rias, overwhelming their souls. Kiba, Rias murmured, her eyes wide, her body seeming unable to believe it. Something in her soul told her this shouldn't have happened. Something inside her said that this was wrong, just like with Issei. There was simply a strange sense of discomfort with everything that had been happening lately, as if this was not how things were supposed to be. Shit, Kiba is. Akino forced a small smile before breathing with some desperation. He's dead, she murmured as her body trembled. Kaneko squinted her eyes. Her fists felt especially weak in this situation, as if she had lost some will to fight, but she still maintained a combat stance. Bost, a strange mechanical voice echoed nearby, catching everyone's attention. Then the girls turned to see it. It was Issei. His badly injured body emerged from a small pile of rubble. Only his right leg seemed fine, while his left leg was completely twisted with broken bones, the same with his left arm. Still, he stood with a determined look. Issei murmured softly, observing the scene, looking at the girls of his dreams, the strange demon, and squinting his eyes. What is happening? Why do Akino, Kaneko, and Rias seem more? Issei didn't understand. Now that he observed those girls, they looked just a bit more human and less like goddesses. They're afraid too, they feel it, their bodies are trembling. Don't you get it yet? D-Drake murmured inside Issei's mind, but the poor boy shook his head quickly. Oh, but it's the little boy who wet his pants when he saw me. Ha, good to have you back on your feet. The strange demon let out a taunt. Chapter 23, Repressed Fury Now Unleashed. Why do you keep clinging to the same crap? You're my damn stupid host. You can't be a pathetic weak man who only thinks about women all day. You're destined to be something far greater. D-Drake roared with fury inside Issei's mind. He had been watching this boy's idiotic actions for far too long. Bost, the strange mechanical voice echoed again from Issei's gauntlet. The poor boy gritted his teeth, stopped staring at the girls, and focused on the strange demon. That image of them is false. I must be hallucinating, Issei told himself. However, damn it, Issei screamed with fury as he looked at the strange demon. You're lying. It's not true. Issei shouted in rage. The fury repressed in his heart for so long now boiled over like boiling water. Yeah, what are you saying? The little shit who pissed his pants wants to play the hero in front of his girls? Yeah, hilarious. The strange demon mocked, and in the next moment, he focused his attention on Issei. Come on, little shit. Hit me if you dare. The strange demon's taunt seemed to have no effect on Issei. The poor boy's mind remained focused on his own thoughts. I am the Red Dragon Emperor. Issei murmured with rage, using his only healthy leg to launch himself forward with force. Bost, again, Issei's arm shouted mechanically, in midair. He flexed his good arm and swung it forcefully forward. A powerful gust of wind spread through the entire place due to Issei Hyoudou's sudden movement. However, the strange demon watched this with a mocking gaze. It's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. Issei shouted, his eyes full of madness. He felt like he could sweep the world before him, but when he was about to strike the demon's face, the latter simply raised a hand. Tap! The strange demon opened his palm and stopped Issei's attack with such ease that he simply grabbed the poor boy's gauntlet. Is this your toy? You feel so confident just because of this, yeah? The strange demon laughed out loud. Issei's body was shaken by inertia, and he vomited half a liter of blood in one go. Squeeze! The strange demon applied pressure to the gauntlet, crushing it and pressing Issei's arm as if it were caught in a vice. Grag! Issei let out a muffled scream of pain. He tried to move with force to break free, but it was impossible. With 2 broken limbs, 1 immobilized, and only 1 good leg, his kicks barely caused any disturbance to the strange demon. Yeah, seems like you haven't learned the basic rules. Little boy, sacred gears depend on the user, a panicked child. The strange demon squeezed the gauntlet again, causing another scream from Issei. The poor boy writhed like a fish out of water, using every kind of movement to try to escape. A panicked, scared child can't even draw out the potential of the weakest sacred gear. Yeah, the strange demon burst into laughter again. Move, damn it, Ria's Gremory said to herself. She had froze after letting her guard down due to her surprise at Kiba's death. The strange green smoke had dispersed all over the place, and her body felt a chilling, creeping fear running through her veins. Her eyes were teary, her body trembled constantly, and her breathing was agitated. Why won't you move? Why won't you honor your royal lineage? Ria's Gremory began to cry, questioning many of the things that tormented her when she was alone, reflecting on her life. Why aren't you more like your brother? She finally asked herself. If she had more strength, she would have broken her teeth from how tightly she clenched them. Her eyes, fully dilated, watched Issei writhe erratically, screaming with torn vocal cords and struggling to break free. Why haven't you surpassed your sister until now? Have you been wasting time eating sweets and playing the good little girl? Ha 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 ha, ridiculous. Kaneko cursed at herself in her mind. Her state was slightly better than Ria's, but even so, she couldn't fight against her thoughts. What happened to your promise? Why did you let your mother die? Why did you abandon her? Akino was already on her knees, eyes on the ground. Erratic tears flowed from her eyes, mixed with sweat streaming down her face. Her moans and sobs were like those of a girl in the middle of a war. Yeah, you've lost. You're trash. The strange demon let out a loud laugh, enjoying how the weak and foolish boy thrashed while he slowly crushed his arm, breaking his bones and compressing his skin. The atmosphere in the room was melancholic. Ria's, Akino, and Kaneko, influenced by the green smoke, Kiba's death, and the torture inflicted on Issei by the strange demon, had mentally collapsed. They were incapacitated. The strange demon eventually stopped laughing and observed how Issei's erratic movements grew weaker, how the poor boy was running out of voice and strength. Huh, that fast? Seems like you've reached your limit. The strange demon couldn't finish speaking. He felt a primitive fear creeping into his being. Something inside him screamed that this was wrong, that if he didn't flee, he would die in a strange, terrible way. What? The strange demon whispered. He released Issei's arm and quickly tried to escape, but... I saw you, a strange, raspy voice whispered near the strange demon. Again, the primitive fear grew stronger in him, and he quickly opened his jaws, remembering something he thought he had forgotten. Orichimaru? The strange demon whispered in absolute fear, immediately falling to his knees. His body no longer seemed to obey his commands. Something was restraining him. Looking more closely, the strange demon finally saw. His body had been surrounded by many green snakes wrapping around him, tightening as if trying to compress him. From a corner of the room came a maniacal laugh, not as loud as the demon's, but loaded with a pure malice that the strange demon could never hope to match. Kuoh, have you forgot me so soon? Orochimaru's magnetic and mocking voice echoed in the room, immediately drawing everyone's attention. Ria's Gremory, Akino Himejima, and Kaneko regained some composure once the strange demon fell to the floor. They raised their heads to see the man in the corner. Pale skin, long hair, gray robes, and a strange wide smile. The girls were stunned. Orochimaru gave off a different feeling of the strange demon with his presence. He felt more mysterious, more mystical, and above all, more dangerous. Unlike the fear and thoughts induced by the previous green smoke, Orochimaru generated a primal fear with no assistance. His mere presence was enough to overwhelm everyone in the room and force them to their knees, if they weren't already. Orochimaru, what are you seeking? The strange demon stammered. His mocking voice had turned into that of a frightened puppy and was barely audible, as if he were whispering. However, the serpent took a few calm steps forward, each one enough to make the strange demon whimper in terror. Nothing. I've only come to stop you from killing the people Itachi-kun cares about. Orochimaru said his intentions with calm and elegance.